Go ahead, Zaid.
All right, we experienced some technical difficulties using 20th century language, but we are here. We are live. It's Friday. It's time for All Politics Are Local, America's number one hip hop talk radio show here at Rutgers Norg. And as every fourth Friday, we begin, as we always do, with our faith leaders of this generation, or between the generations, the disciples. Pastor in the Hood, Bryant Ali. Reverend now Councilwoman Louise Scott-Rountree, and Haqq Muhammad of Mosque number 25 of our beloved Nation of Islam, as they chime in. And at the controls on the, and they ain't the 1-2s because we're on computers, right? The controls.
Well, you might as well say 3-4.
Donna K. Williams.
3-4.
Woo! Now that was a challenge.
Yeah, we all tried to get it right. Before we jump in with the disciples, just a quick run of the show. Disciples, of course, will give us a hard, heavy, hot, faith, fiery hour of analysis and faith. At 7 o'clock, we will have some representatives from the unions at Rutgers NUC, because there's potentially a strike looming at Rutgers, perhaps its first in its history. At 7:30, we'll have Nahem from the US-Cuba Normalization Committee. There's a major conference coming up on Cuba in the beginning of next month. At 8 o'clock, between 8 o'clock and 8:30, we'll split the time between Professor Linda Carter at Essex County College and a special guest from the Patterson Foundation. We'll be talking about an important event at the Milk Public Library that'll be taking place to launch Women's History Month next Saturday. And of course, we end, as we always do, with the greatest DJ in the universe, our DJ Rhino, who will ride us into the 9 o'clock hour. So, disciples, are you ready?
We ready.
Unmute yourself and let the
We
fire.
ready.
Unmute yourself and let the fire begin.
What's going on? Reverend Louise Scott-Rountree, council member at large. Why don't you open us up in prayer, baby?
Just everybody mute unless you talk. Go ahead.
Whoa! Now that's something different. Good evening. Good evening to my big brother, Pastor in the Hood, Pastor Bryant Ali, Baba Zaid, Councilwoman Donna, to our producer, Brother Ed, to our Minister Haqq Muhammad. Brother Zaid Muhammad just came and brought us right on in on this All Politics Local number one hip hop radio station. Let us pray. Father God, we come before you, thanking you for this wonderful, glorious, fire-filled, fabulous Friday. We come thanking you, God, that you've given us one more opportunity to be a voice for the voiceless, to speak to those who need their consciousness just shaken just a little bit. We thank you for the producers. We thank you for the disciples. We thank you for the opportunity, for this is still the day that you have made. And no matter what's going on in our life, we have an opportunity to rejoice and be glad in it as you cover our city, our state, our county, our country, and this world, and all the leaders and all the oppressed are still in your hand. Please hear this, your humble servant's prayer, in the name of some who call you Jesus. Some call you Allah, some call you Yahweh, some call you Elohim, but you're our God and our Creator. Amen, amen, and ashe. All politics are local.
Make it
Back in your hands, Pastor, in the hood.
Good to be here. It's good to be here. Welcome to each and every one of you. Here it is, the last Friday in the month of February that has been designated for some Black History Month, but I celebrate all year long because the last time I looked, I was Black in January, I was Black in March, I was Black in April, I was Black in all the rest of the months. So I'm making history throughout the year. So I don't know how I can just be one month that I have a historic moment that I can share, like I didn't contribute the rest of the year, and you take the rest of my contributions and try to put them in a box. and say, hey, this is your month. So to each his own, and I thank God for it. But I believe that we have to celebrate all year long because it's been a rough season. It's been a rough season. I've been under attack. My grandchildren and my great-grandson is in intensive care. My granddaughter broke her leg. Another granddaughter just got out of mental health care. And it's just been one battle after another. But I still declare that this is the day that the Lord has made. And I made a choice to rejoice and be glad in it. But when I look around our society, when I look around our community, when I talk with different individuals, so many people are going through and so many people are feeling hopeless. I know the pandemic has been on for 3 years and now it's winding down. It's supposed to be over for some, just beginning for others. But whatever the case may be, we as people of color have been through hard times before. And I think it's a time, my Reverend Louise and Brother Zaid Baba, that we shake ourselves and come out of that's in the past. That is in the past we can't go back to. I believe that it's better than what I just came out of. And don't get me wrong, it's been rough. But I believe we as a people, we have to come out and shake ourselves and start working towards a better future. We have to believe that it's better. We believe it when we wake up in the morning and say, this is going to be my day. This day I'm not going to be depressed if I can. This day I'm not going to speak against my brother. This day I'm going to pray for my enemy. This day I'm going to lift up somebody else. This day I'm going to be kind. This day I'm going to open up a book, whether it's a faith book or whether it's a book of knowledge or whether it's the newspaper. This day I choose to empower myself. And as I empower myself, I don't want to gossip about anybody else, but I want to empower somebody along the way. If I can't lift up and empower my brother, then I won't do anything at all. But we have to get out of the habit of tearing folk down and refusing to build folk up.
Come on, sir.
So I'm just excited, even in the midst of the storm. I believe that the storm is for a purpose, because if it had not been for the storm, Reverend Roundtree, we would still be status quo. And
well, hold on. After the storm comes what? What do we see after storms?
After the storm comes the rainbow. The
rainbow. And the truth is, Pastor Ali, with all of those trials and all of those tribulations, see, we're in a different place. So we have to help somebody because everybody's not where we are. Some of the stuff we've been through, we're taking some folks out. You included, Zaid and Donna. Some of the stuff we've witnessed, some of what we've experienced, some of what our family's going through, heck, some of what we've been through personally. Some folks would not have been able to stand, which leads me to, we did an interfaith seminar on suicide on Wednesday.
And so, can Pastor Council, can we just step back for one favor? And I don't want to lose it. Pastor Ali said something, but he also posted on his Facebook.
What was
we are in the third day of Lent season.
Right.
And can you just, before you go into the suicide, can you just talk
I don't want to go into the suicide
about this season and go there? Just okay.
I was going there to get back to where we are in this 40-day period, because the truth is what Pastor Ali just said. When I said what some of us have been, he just finished telling you about all his grandchildren. You know, and we can even go back to one having the issue with the neck. This is a personal, like some Christians would call it a personal attack on our lineage. We talking about 40 days of what you gonna give up. That's what we do in Lent season. It's a season technically of sacrifice. Like what you gonna give up? Some potato chips, some fried chicken. Pastor Ali said it very well. You're going to give up backbiting and gossiping. Or you got to order against your brother. You keep it instead of settling it before the sun go down. So it all ties into a not give up spirit, which leads to what we talked about in the seminar. This is a season that we pray. When I say that, and I'm going to turn it over to Pastor Ali, my brother, but I didn't want to lose my thought because he just finished talking about 4 of his grandchildren.
And I'm sorry, I interrupted you and you were talking about the suicide seminar.
Oh, that's something different. that ties into people have given up before your grandchildren. We can't hear you, Pastor. You on mute, Pastor Ali. You on mute. You know, people have given up. They didn't give up potato chips. They didn't give up fried chicken or movie. They gave up on life. You know, they sacrificed themselves for, and you fill in the blank. But if you're talking about the season of Lent, and I think Pastor Ali is, and I'm just going to say this, that's what I want to talk about. He is one of the most profound and strongest brothers that you could ever want to meet, Sister Donna. And Brother Zaya, you already know this because y'all done walked the streets with him. You've seen. But then we have to talk about physical challenges. Because while we're trying to deal with things in the street with the people, trying to help them, trying to raise their awareness, trying to be what we need to be for the people, we too go through. We too have circumstances, health issues, children issues, mate issues, job issues, church issues, masjid issues, school issues. We as leaders suffer some of the same issues or with. It can either be a burden or it can be a blessing. And during the season of Lent, we sacrifice for blessings. And the blessings that while I'm on this little 2-second soapbox is that those 4 grandbabies he just talked about, because we was on here one time praying for a grandbaby that got shot.
Yeah.
If y'all remember that show.
That's right.
But God brought that baby through. And I believe that in some point, whether we live to see it or not, we're going to be brought through. But what are we willing to sacrifice? We don't want to give up nothing. But if you talk about the season of Lent, I challenge all of you to just see what the outcome would be. I know what I gave up. There was a couple of things I had to give up. Listen, anything that you think you can't do without, some people really can't do without chicken and Pepsi Cola, cigarettes, weed, a drink. 40 days. Some people might not make it past the first. That's only dealing with the Lent season. Pastor Ali, you unmuted.
Pastor, and while you unmuted,
let me say this with the Lent season. Let me give clear understanding. For the period of Lent is a Catholic holiday. Let me make that straight.
Yes.
It's not a Protestant holiday. So a lot of our Baptists and Pentecostals will not celebrate it. I celebrate the 40 days of a period of sacrifice. But because it deals with the death, burial, and resurrection, it leads us up to what I call Resurrection Sunday and crucifixion. But I want to make it clear that we're not ignorant. We know that it's a Catholic holiday.
That's right.
Represent repentance and et cetera, but I believe that it's a good period of time, just like Ramadan and just
that's like right.
They go through a period of sacrifice, go through a period of self-examination.
Yes.
See, during Lent, I had to give up my own ambition, my own thoughts, where I thought I should be, instead of being thankful for where I'm at. You know, when I look at what my children are going through and stuff like that, and I watched my granddaughter on yesterday after she got out of Cedar Grove and watched her trying to adjust back to society. Here it is, a 24-year-old female trying to adjust back to society when she should be enjoying the best days of her life. Just back, and her aunt works for the county, County jail, getting ready to retire. And when she talked about their lockdown, stuff like that, and I talked about my son down there true. And I told her to give her a holler for me. And I thought about, you know, the mentality of when you have to readjust to society. And that happens whether you're sick, whether you're in the hospital, whether you're in prison, whether you're down for a week, whether you're unemployed, whatever the case may be. When you have a down season, you have to readjust to society. And this is the challenge. The society that we're readjusting to is different. The society that we're readjusting to, some wear masks, some don't. The society that we are adjusting to, some are social distance, some are not. The society that we are readjusting to is different across the United States. Forget about overseas, just the United States, across the country. Nothing united about it. Each state got their own thing, doing their own thing. If you listen to DeSantis from Florida, or let him tell it, there's nothing going on. There's nothing wrong. You know, he's against everybody that don't flow with him. But when you think about reevaluating your own self, the scriptures tell me to present my body as a living sacrifice, Romans 12:1, holy and acceptable unto God, which is my reasonable service, being not conformed to this world, but being transformed by the renewing of my mind, and not to think of myself more highly than I should, because God has given me a measure of faith, each of us a measure of faith that we can make it. So that means I can accomplish what I'm put here to do based on the measure of faith that has been downloaded into me, if I can put it in modern day terms, by the Creator. And what he downloaded in me, he didn't download in Diamond. He downloaded something different in her, something different in Zaid, something different in the councilwoman. But we all, as I tell people all the time, we talk about the body as a whole. I'm the pinky toe. I see myself as the pinky toe. Ain't not worth going to get it pedicured, not worth putting nothing on it. It's just it's the pinky toe. It's ugly, it's little, but hit it the wrong way, and it will upset the whole body. As ugly as it still is an important part of the body. It has its role, just like the hand has its role, just like the neck has its role, just like the elbow has its role. And this is the problem, beloved. Too many people are trying to be what they're not. Too many legs trying to be the head. Too many feet trying to be the mouthpiece.
Hey, hold on.
Yes, sir.
Pastor Ali. Pastor Ali.
You hit the note on that one, beloved.
Because
Whoa.
you're part of the body.
Baba and Pastor Ali and Donna. You heard what he just said? Too many people trying to be all of these things. So there's
Too
this
many legs trying to be the head. That's what he
wait
said.
a minute. There's this scripture that says in Philippians 4:13, I can do all things. Okay. You hear that? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. The problem is some people have not identified what the all is for them. So just because all is in that scripture doesn't mean all is yours, or the all that you might be putting yourself. Oh, I can do that because if I depend on God to give me strength, well, that might not be for you to do. So you're depending on strength for something that's not even your assignment. So the first thing is to identify what that all is that's assigned to you. I mean, I know that there's some things that I don't even have. People ask me to do things. I'm wise enough to know that's not for me, baby. Oh, you can do it. No, that's what you say. But I already know. God didn't tell me that was for me. People were telling me about running for office years ago. And I said, God, no, I'm not running for nothing but God. Because it had to be in God's time that assignment that I was prepared. If it was going to be any preparation for me to do such a thing, I had to be prepared. And everybody doesn't look at some of the things that they jump into. They're not prepared. And I often say, whatever God has ordained, he will maintain and sustain. So a lot of times we put ourselves in positions, forget the statement that my brother just made about, the hand trying to do what the heart do. That's That's just impossible. Trying to fit a square in a circle, But we do these things, and sometimes we end up wasting time and stagnating progress of something that we could be if we just stuck to the assignment that we were supposed to be focused on in the first. Imagine how great. Okay, I'm talking about a perfect world, which is something we don't live in. But imagine, just with your sanctified imagination, or with your revolutionary imagination, or with your political imagination. How about just a spiritual imagination that individuals who set out and were given an assignment to do one thing and they mastered that before they jumped into 5 other things? I don't take on no more than God said you can do. Not Donna said it. Not Baba said it. I can use your encouragement, but that's only after I know that it's something I'm assigned to do. So, Ali, that is such a key thing. If we could get our individuals to get behind, listen, you all were walking down streets before I ever walked in any street. Somebody said, oh, well, you've only been doing this for 10 years. If I've been doing it for 20 minutes, at least I'm now doing it. Because it wasn't my time at that time, because my consciousness, my awareness is not what it is today. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we have to grow into some things that God wants us to do. I knew about Nat Turner, but I didn't even know until I started hanging with y'all that Newark, and here I am, Newark, we are the only city that have the Nat Turner Park.
That's right.
Okay, so you get to Amiri Baraka, live right down the street from Committee for Unified North. All my first years of my life, building right down there on Martin Luther King Boulevard. I'm right up the street in the Cougar Sky. Didn't know. I used to want to wear dashikis and have an afro. My mother had me in little straight ponytails and playing. I wanted this. Now I'm glad, because in God's time, all the things that they were out there advocating for was for me, for us. They were advocating for Conway and the Towers before this thing even came up. They were advocating to cross over into Newark before I was old enough to know what Imperiali and Mary Rocket was doing, Imama was doing. So now I'm aware of this, and I'm like, whoa, I can't be quiet about some things, but only the things God tells me to open my mouth about. Because if you want to really show yourself a fool, start talking about something you don't know nothing about, and those who don't know will know just how big where they say you'll remove all doubt.
Mm-hmm. That's what they say. Nobody know how dumb you are.
Let me jump on in with my 2 cents.
Go ahead, Ty. Go ahead.
One, we lift you up, my brother. We lift you up.
All the way up.
All the way up. In our prayers, in our circle, for your grands, right? Because that's what we do. We say we got you. I want to lift up your queen too, because I don't get a chance to even get online hardly these days because I'm so busy with both jobs. But I know the queen had a birthday the other day, right?
Yes, she did.
Right, exactly.
That's right. We want to send her some birthday love.
Yes, First Lady Belina of this generation.
That's right. His First Lady. Now we haven't
First Lady of this generation.
But Reverend Roundtree, we have not talked about the question of suicide in our community in a while, right?
Right.
The fact that you just had this.
Well, actually, we did it last month
discussion.
when Twitch died. We had the mental health segment on, but it's always timely because coming out of COVID, we've been on top of. The educators have talked about it, and they just keep saying we have not. It has yet to be revealed how this mental health is going to affect us.
And the other thing, of course, is the stigmas around mental health that we still have not been mature enough to address. Right?
And you know what, Robert?
We've been struggling with it. A lot of us don't even realize we've been struggling with it.
Hold on.
In our own minds and our own behinds. Right? I've lost loved ones to suicide. Right? That's something I take real personal. Right? All of us are trying to help our communities heal. We're trying to prevent suicides. We ain't just trying to prevent homicides. We're trying to prevent homicides, suicide, femicide, genocide, all of this stuff. That's right.
And then on the other side of that, so many things, and this is what, even with dealing with our women's meeting, and people say, oh, you need to deal with this, you need to deal with that topic. I said, baby, we need to deal with so many topics. We're not going to deal with none of them in one day. But the point is that we need to get to them at some point. Suicide, domestic violence, molestation. There are things that people don't even want to talk about. But we got a good portion of our people running around suffering with mental health problems because of some of these things, and they need to be addressed. The problem is, are we ready for what comes out as a result of this once people start realizing? Because every so often there's a rush of, here we go with those in the Catholic Church. I'm not, those children who've been, dealt with their parents, incest. All of these different things lead to mental health issues, which then leads to, do I want to live with this the rest of my life, or am I going to see what I can do to make this happen? When I was asked by Catholic Charities and Assemblywoman Tucker to bring some faith leaders together to have this seminar, I was like, yes, because I know that anything that's uncomfortable to talk about, that God has already given me the approval to talk about it. Because God wants it addressed. Because we can't save you, but we want to at least do everything in our power to let you know, no matter what you're going through, no matter what's going on in life, that you are not, like somebody said to me the other day. They was like, oh, Rountree, and they say this to me all the time. I'd be like, well, if I live to see next, if it's God's will and I'm here. Right. And they say things like, oh, what you mean? You're going to be here? I said to the people in the seminar, well, bring me my contract with the date on it that somebody done spoke to you about, since you know the day or the hour. And they start laughing because we don't know when. But I'm not going to help myself.
That's right.
I mean, I'm not going to help myself. It'll never be that bad. But you know what? That's Rountree. That might be Ali. That might be Donna. That might be Zaid. But there are people out here that you don't know what their breaking point is, and what pushed them to the point where they just said, to hell with it. I'd rather not be alive.
And and that's what inspired me, because just watching Pastor Ali, and he has been going through.
Yes.
And then on the first day of Ash Wednesday, I'm sorry. And he came out. I believe you had service that day, because you post and you mentioned on your post, we got to let some things go. And in the midst of whatever, because you had not revealed to any of us what you were going through, but you came out and inspired us. Let me unmute you.
No, we had the ministers' conference on Monday, so
go ahead, Pastor Ali.
Wednesday, I was just using the pictures from that to specify on Wednesday, when more people were more in tune to getting the ashes on their head and stuff like that, and many of them without knowing why. When you remember, I am dust. From dust I came, and dust
I will return.
And I think with depression, people with depression, my wife has given me insight on that by working for mental health. People can be depressed and nothing really going wrong in their life. They can be down and don't know why they're down. It could be a psychosis within their own body, within their own mind. And even David said, why are you cast down? When he had his moments, why are you cast down? What's wrong with you? I will yet praise the Lord. The Lord is still good. Let me shake myself. Let me come out of this thing. Because remember, we got an adversary. We got a devil. He come to steal, kill, and destroy. He gets upset when you get happy. He wants to see you down. He wants to see you broken. He wants to see you hating individuals. He wants to see you taking folk out. And some people, when they commit suicide, they take the whole family out. Nobody gets left behind, And people of the lighter hue are famous for that, taking out the whole family, But times get difficult for individuals, don't know what's going on. Some people are terminally ill. and they have no sense of, by his stripes I'm healed. So they think I can rush it along. I don't want to go through this. I don't want to practice this. And I think in today's society, I think in the diversity, we don't take time to understand our neighbor. You know, when we look at, when we talk about blackness now, that's using this as an example, when you look at our community, it's people that look like us, that don't think they are us. They don't identify with us. They don't communicate with us, and they feel like they're not connected to us. And that's culture. They were raised different. You take an African from Britain, is different than an African that's raised in America. You know, you look at people. What are your goals? What are you raising your children to be? What are you raising them to do? What are you giving them freedom to do? Can they go past the block? Have you allowed them to go to New York? Have you allowed them to go to Harlem? Have you allowed them to research their heritage for school assignments? And that's self-awareness. Self-awareness. You know, Zaid and I come from the 70s and everything. In the 70s, it was all about getting the coochie. No disrespect to nobody. You know, it was all.
My Lord.
The song.
Out to it.
You know, dipping on the wall at the party. You know, who could I get over on? I had my throwaway 25 cents to get in the basement with the throwaway. 50 without, you know, the lights out, blue light specials, and you will get down there and you get the rubbing, call it slow dragging. You get the rubbing with an individual in the dark, and you're only human, you're only young. Nobody told you how to control yourself. And many times, no brothers admitted, many times brothers had the action happen too soon. Before the record was over, they were done. And they come out the party, and when we look at that, we party, but who parties now? Who celebrates?
You keeping this conversation real and transparent.
You know, who does? Because these things, reason why I keep it real.
Call it the lies of love.
The love, yes.
Let's look at this. Let's look at this. And I'll have y'all comment on it. The fact of the matter is, family dynamics have changed because of that era. So we are 2 and 3 generations in, where back in the day, it was mama and daddy. All the kids, unless mama died or daddy died, all the kids were of the same lineage. But many children were brought into a family from that era. Then when the parents got their act together, they weren't together no more. So now here it is, the child that was from that era finds themselves in a strange family. And so family dynamics have changed. That when you look at the family dynamics, people are trying to adjust when they come from different walks of life, so to speak. I mean, they can't even go and give their history at the health department because it's different. You know, little things. They come down with illnesses that the brothers don't have. And they say, well, who are your brothers? Well, this is such and such. They my brothers and everything. And we know that Jesus had that issue. Him and Joseph had that issue. They don't talk about it. 30 years, him and Joseph hung out together. But Jesus had no connection to Joseph. He only had connection to Mary, even though he called Joseph daddy. And that's real in this today's society. So many people are calling other individuals daddy. And so many individuals are calling other individuals mama. And that's why Big Mama is the matriarch. Big Mama brings the whole clan together and raises them. Because daddy died young. I remember during the AIDS epidemic.
These kids started calling me Bob in my 40s. We usually don't get that till our 60s. And I had to just stop and say, whoa.
Hold on. Wait a minute, hold on. Your kids call you by your name?
You know?
No, my kids call me different things.
I know, but I'm talking about, because you had different eras going on in different stages in your life. But Baba, your kids call you Baba?
Dad.
No. Kids started calling me Baba, right? Baba.
Not your children.
Yeah, in general, right? In general, the kids in the community
Do you know I didn't know what it was like? I never in my life growing, and this is so, I don't know. I never called even the people that used to work for my mother by their first name. I didn't know how to. I would name them brother or sister so-and-so, because in the church, that's what I would hear. So in an employee, if my mother said, Joe, can you bring me a broom? I would say, Brother Joe, did you hear Mom? I didn't know how to, I don't even know. And I hear children today call their mothers by their first name. And my son is 28. He was telling somebody the other day, he said, you know, he said, I might sometime be a little snappy with the mouth. He said, but I can't even twist. I wouldn't even know how to call my mother Louise. I wouldn't even, he acted like it would be a curse to do that. I don't know whether
totally get that.
There's a separation of if you say it's okay, if you approve it, it's one thing. If they just start doing it, to me, I don't know that there's a thin line between the respect and disrespect of the leadership or the. I don't know. Pastor Ali, help me out with this.
It's a matter of correction.
And how you grew up. How you grew up.
That's correct.
So,
say, no, that's not name. It's like
you got 14-year-old mothers and 14, 28-year-old grandmothers. That means at 14 she had a baby. At 14 the other one had a baby. So they sort of like kind of grew up together. You know, it might have been mommy when they
went to school. They called Miss Jones, Miss Jones. Yeah. You didn't go to Miss Jones' class and say Martha.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You were taught that in school. You didn't go to the principal's office and say, "What's up, Joe?"
Yeah.
You know, so the discipline was there. It got lost in the house because there was no respect. Because the 28-year-old did not want to be considered 50.
Right.
Grandma, 50-year-old term. You better not call me grandma. You call me such and such.
Yeah, now it's Nina, grandma.
Yeah,
you got everything but a grandma. You know, when you say yes, ma'am, to some people, when you say yes, ma'am, to some people, or yes, sir, you know, some folks want to say you going back to slave because that's what you said to you had yes, master. You know, so you say yes, sir. You're not being respected. I had a woman tell me, and it was just a habit.
I to feel that way.
Yeah, I know. I said something. I said, yes, ma'am. She said, I'm only 60 years old. I ain't no yes, ma'am. And I was like, I said, well, sweetheart, it was just a term of endearment, you know. So I said, okay, yes, my sister.
Honor and respect. We call that the proper handling of the people in the nation.
And yeah, I said, okay, my beautiful, beloved sister, whatever you say. And she was like, now that's good right there.
I'm like, what do you prefer? Because when they say, well, that's go back to them. Well, you won't back then. You don't know. You
ain't You ain't the house nigga today. You ain't the field nigga today. You corporate executive. What?
Yeah, and you want to be
making 6 figures. What you care as long as we ain't calling you crazy and some other choice names that y'all know. Did Baba get loose?
Like you said,
Baba get loose.
Like
Baba get loose. You talking about hoochies and coochies. Baba get loose. Shoot. We'll hear some language on here. There won't be a disciple show. It'll be a discipline show.
But I remember the counsel my grandmother used to catch us, and she would be like, put a handle on it. So I just, and to this day, it may be some older people. I don't know.
Where'd she go?
She hit the wrong button.
I'm going to be transitioning from my office while we're waiting on her to come back.
It's actually nice to see you in your office. I see you sitting down, not overwhelmed, driving, not running people over and going through red lights and whatnot, trying to take care of the whole world. So now you got a beautiful office. Look at your desk, your pictures and whatnot. Look at that. We don't have to see that.
I did it from my office last month. That's why I like it, because when I do it from the phone and traveling, I lose you guys, and I'm back and forth. And so I found out how to finally get it on my computer. And I like this a lot better because there's no interruptions. You know who I do miss today? Here she comes. Minister Haqq. I think Savior's Day is in 2 days.
No, it's
If
just
I'm not mistaken.
This is 26. 26.
Now, as you were saying, Madam Counsel.
I was just saying that my grandmother would say, if I ever
Put a
say
handle on it.
put a handle on it. But younger people, but I went to the military, but I was also raised like that. So saying this is everything wasn't taught in the military, it was taught in the household, but it enforced it. Now, if I say, like you said, this is something no right now, and they probably stopped me, and I was like, you earned that, or I learned that, but you're gonna get it.
Absolutely.
It is. And I think one of the challenges is that we don't discuss what goes on with everybody. Just so that's flowing. Call it flowing, but you're flowing actually accomplishing nothing. And every once in a while, you have to take time out and sit down with an individual, even with my preaching, my style of preaching now in 2023. Instead of trying to shove, because I'm only in service for an hour and 15 minutes, trying to shove 50 minutes of sermon down people's throat. 15 minutes. Impactful. Spend the other 10 minutes worshiping with them. I spend it after time. Where you at? How you doing? What's going on? Not trying to be nosy. Not trying to be a bit.
Being intentional.
Trying to be concerned.
All's well.
Concerned.
This is what we found out. I found out in society. A lot of people do not get the proper concern, proper information when it comes to each other. You know, we have a boy at the church that's living at the church and from Mount Olive, and he's from Africa, and his whole theology is different. The way he talks is different. The way he greets is different. But he greets and he talks and he has conversation. He reaches out to people because he's learning in the process. It was a guy from Mexico, didn't know no English, but he spoke. You know, he wanted to learn the ways. And I think what it is, our young people have their own way, Zaid and Reverend and Donna. And sometimes we as older, as the elders, don't take time to learn their way. It may not agree with it, but as we said, modern technology done changed the language. Don't have to agree with all of it. You know, the terms and stuff like that, the shortcuts to get through and all these different things. And, you know, the new sayings that are out and the AWOL, that used to be a way without official leave, you know, how they have changed, LOL, you know, laugh out loud, you know, different stuff. And then when you look at the kids are so caught up into this phone. They don't know it's a computer.
It's the world, honey. They just go phone. It's the world.
They got the world in their head.
The world. When we was growing up, we didn't have all that.
They want to talk to the person in the next room.
Yep. Forget the next room. Pastor Sharpton said, Al Sharpton was telling a story. He said he was out to dinner with his two daughters, right? He said, and these things got us so we don't even communicate with people when we in front of them. He said they sitting at the table and his daughter's texting him, so what you gonna order for dinner? He said he looked at it and said, I'm sitting right here. Why you texting me? I'm just saying, but this is the then we want kids to sit and listen to us. I appreciate what Pastor Ali is saying. We want individuals that are sitting under our voice to hear what we're saying, especially the young folk. The truth of the matter is, if you're not saying anything with any real substance and content that strikes their interest in this, you can say some stuff that's going to make a difference. It's how you say it and what perspective you put it in. Otherwise, the world got their attention on that device in their hands. Why should I listen to you, Baba? Stand up in front of me for 20 minutes talking about something that I don't like the way you're saying it, when I could just go and read on this phone something that's going to grab my attention and my interest. Pastor Rawls said, and he put it so eloquently, not Bishop Booby, son. He said this about 10 years ago. He said, why would the children want to hear us? And I finished with what I just said. If I had my way, see, we used to walk around collecting bubble gum. Hello.
Mm-hmm.
And if you was talking in the back of the church, it wasn't no smell. You got removed from the group.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a mother that, Lord, I didn't really care to sit by, but being the first lady and the daughter of the first lady. So if I had somebody sitting on the side of me and I said, boo, my mother could be clapping her hands and not miss a beat. Bam. Bam. I got popped in the mouth. Don't nobody know. I'm like, but she heard me out of her left ear. You know, it's so important. Like I can sit and listen to Barbara, Larry, Ali, Raz Baraka, my pastor. There's some people that I can sit and listen to even now and not get distracted because they're saying something that's, I'm going to learn something. I might hear something from your experience that this device can't give me. They don't know that yet. That's why this world seems like it has everything. But I've learned, I bought Larry Ham, the Good Neighbor, for a Black History program. And you know, on a Sunday morning, Baba, the service is like, this was before COVID. So you might have done 2 hours, and that's including the offering, the singing, the praying, and the preaching going there somewhere for about 20, 25 minutes. Well, Larry got up there and started talking. And at the time, your friend was out sick. He hurt his foot. But he was watching it live. Larry got to about 30 minutes. I was like, okay. 45 minutes. I was like, Reverend gonna kill me. So when it got to an hour, I texted Pastor. I said, is it all good? All good? He was like, yeah, let him keep going. Larry talked for an hour and almost 40 minutes. But do you know nobody got up? Nobody.
He can wind up on you. That's right.
But he was saying things.
He was saying something.
He's a walking history book, first of all.
And he knows
watch
how
this.
to say it to your
watch
point.
this. He's wise because how he grasped the audience's attention is he talked about his testimony. You remember when he was in the hospital and how he was, okay? If man had his way, his report would have been he ain't gonna be here. He started telling church folks that story and went on. So now he's got their attention. Now you're throwing out dates of stuff people ain't even thought of that have happened historically. So I say that to say that if you're going to stand in front of some folk, because the kids were so excited that he was already scheduled to speak for the afternoon program for 20 minutes. They got a whole, he said, they might not want to hear me. I done talked so long this morning. I said, oh, they loving you now. We're going to get the rest of the story. And he came back and he spoke that afternoon. But I say that to say, what are you saying? We on this all politics are local. Do we not want to say something we hope as the disciples is going to help somebody? I mean, you have people on here to help the community. You have people on here to deal with current events. We talk about Tyree Nichols. We talk about George Floyd. We can talk about the mayor. We can talk about the council, school, education, teachers, events. But the truth is, what is the listening audience or the viewing audience leaving with when they go back to look that weren't here and that are on right now? What are they leaving? What do we say? Do we say something to make them say? What did Arsenio Hall say? To make them go, you know? I mean, really, do I want my child calling me or my granddaughter calling me Louise? Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
She is 8 years old, and it's a form of respect. Now, when you get to be a certain age, you might be able to call me, if you don't want to call me grandma, a term of endearment, but I don't care what you call me, you will not call me Louise, not to my face. But what's more important is that we gain their respect on all levels, not just in the name. How we, just like we want their respect, the people want to be respected.
And as we come to
it's almost that time, but here go the sergeant at arms. Baby, John ain't here tonight. He ain't here tonight. Jonathan not here. Donna said, all right, it's all. But we got some announcements to make, so let me let.
That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
Please say your announcements.
Yes.
And give us some last thoughts.
Well, my last
you are our host. Well, let everybody know.
Best days in front of us. Our best days in front of us. And keep on believing that. Get up believing today is the best day of your life. Anticipate tomorrow being even better. As I leave this program, I'm going to pay my respects to Dr. Lloyd Terrell and just, you know, give respect to the family. He was a giant whose deposit will be recognized more now that it's gone.
That's right.
He was here. Lloyd Preston Terrell, Sr.
Yep, Dr. Terrell.
And I know, and Pastor Ali, you gotta have a song in your heart. I know we do this for our guests, but you got a go-to song?
Oh, my go-to song is "What a Friend We Have in Jesus." All our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege it is to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer.
There you go. All right, Councilwoman Reverend, go ahead.
Yes. Well, first let me, before I get to that part, talk about the things that are coming up. So February 28th, 2023, at St. James AME Church, we are having a policing policy and procedure event with all of the law enforcement agencies. Some people don't know that when a homicide takes place and a shooting takes place in the city of Newark, that the police are on the scene. And once it becomes a homicide, it's then taken over by the county. I'm just using that as one example. Bob is very familiar with policing and policies and procedures, but there are a lot of faith leaders that don't know. They have no idea. So we're having this. We have various agencies coming in. It's all faith leaders and community are surely welcome to join us on Tuesday, February 28th at 6. I'm going to send you the flyer, Donna and Baba. For this.
It's been going around.
Oh, and it's going to be, so anyone that knows anything about anything that I'm sort of like kind of involved in, is order. There's definitely order. This is just an introduction to all of the agencies. There are some questions. I've already got a couple of people that sent questions that we will be answering. And of course, I'll be taking a couple from those who were there. But yes, this is taking place Tuesday at St. James AME Church. Myself, Pastor Bartley, from Nan, Steffi, and
Did you just say Pastor Bartley? Did you just say Pastor Bartley?
I said Pastor Bartley.
Oh, okay.
Man, no, Pastor Bartley in Georgia getting ready to retire. He getting ready to retire. Matthew Bartley.
Very different.
Bartley getting ready to retire.
Yeah, he's getting up there. How old is he? He's got to be in his.
Oh God.
He's getting up there now. Yeah. Yeah, I would think at least. Yeah.
So my next announcement, I do want to send out a thank you to those who for our immediate Women's Commission event last night and paying tribute to the legacy and life of Alexis Amber Trustee.
I met her mother today.
Yes, her mom was there and the children. And how do we say we keep legacies alive. We call their names. We will not let people get, even though they're joined the ancestors, we will not let these spirits that dwelt amongst us once, their lives be in vain. So we thank those who came out last night. We want to thank God for allowing First Lady Belina Ali, First Lady of this generation, to see another birthday, date of birth. I love this sister. She does not take no tea for the fever.
That's right.
I love her. She gonna tell you what it is, what it's gonna be, what it's not gonna be, and have a good day at the same time. And on this Friday coming as well, so we had a very successful women's meeting on February 3rd. On March 3rd, we will be reconvening at the Priori Restaurant at 6:30. We will have Invest Newark and Allison Ladd, our Director of Economic Development, to talk about home ownership. Now, let me be very clear. That was a topic that was picked, but what we're going to be doing, as I said earlier in this show, that we are going to, there's so many topics, Donna. You got mental healthness, you got mothers, you got financial literacy. So we're going to go ahead and deal with some of the issues, which is going to bring that audience for home ownership. But then we're going to bring banks, people to listen. Let me be real clear to those who are watching. I know some of y'all out there just trying to hold on to your apartment, especially after COVID. And now we want to talk about how to buy a house. Well, it's possible, but do know that we're coming for all topics. So February 3rd, myself, Councilwoman Monica McIver, First Lady Linda Baraka will be hosting, along with the women of this city, the next North Citywide Women's Meeting. So we invite all of the sisters to come out. It's Women's History Month, but we celebrate Black history and women's history and your history, Baba, and our brothers every month. The truth of the matter is, I said to someone at another event Sunday that we celebrate Black history every day, because there would be no history if it wasn't for us, and we are history. The truth of the matter is, February is just our anniversary. That's all that is. February, we just, take the whole month and celebrate like your birthday. People now don't just celebrate day one day. They celebrate all month long. Truth be told, wait a minute. Mama, all y'all gonna be 21 till you hit your next birthday next year. Okay, so if you're 30 today, and today's your birthday, you're gonna be 30 all the way until February 23rd. So depends on how you want to look at it, but I'm asking the sisters to come join us on March 3rd, 2023. Most importantly, February 28th, faith leaders, community, come out, meet your law enforcement agencies and leaders, federal, local, and municipal. I thank God for a mayor that has opened up, not just for us as faith leaders to be, to have the autonomy, right word, to be able to do what we need to do for the people of our community. All right, Baba, where you going? Come on back, because y'all got other guests. We getting ready to peace out of here. Donna, we love you. Pastor in the Hood. I'm going tomorrow morning to Pastor Terrell. And Sunday morning, Bishop Rudy B. Carlton celebrating 34 years. That's your brother, your overseer.
And Reverend Roundtree and Councilwoman, what is your go-to? What's the song that you heard?
Sometimes you have to encourage yourself. Sometimes you have to speak victory during the test. And no matter how you feel, speak the word and you will be healed. Speak over yourself. Encourage yourself in the Lord. That's it.
And thank you. And we will see you next month. And you guys have a blessed, and we'll talk to you soon.
Love you. Love you, Brother Ed, wherever you are, Kim.
Okay. So we're waiting for Brother Zaid to come out. So just give us a second, okay? We'll be right with you.
Okay, there we go. I apologize, everybody. Has some backstage issues. Oh, Ike, you're on early. Ike, we're gonna hold up on Ike. I got a segment before you, Ike. I got to get Ihsan on, and I got to get her. I got to get Whitney on. So Ike, you go out for a few. We'll bring you in a few minutes.
No problem. No problem.
Ihsan, you have now. Where's Professor Straub? Is he going to join us? Can you hear it? Can you hear me? Ihsan, can you hear me? You muted it. We can't hear you.
Is Whitney supposed to be on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now we're not hearing Ihsan though. I'm concerned about that. We're not hearing her. And she's got all the details. Battles are won and lost in details, right? Ihsan, what's up with your mic, kid? What's up with your mic? Well, Professor Whitney Straub, you're gonna have to rescue your student right now. Let me try and set up this segment this way, and y'all will appreciate this. Now we're getting ready to talk about a crisis, a work condition crisis that is looming at Rutgers University, Newark, where this show was born. Let's forget our focal started at Rutgers, Newark, and for reasons that we have never been told, we are no longer there. So these management issues are quite interesting to us. So this is from the door. I got to say, solidarity 1,000%. Y'all understand that? All right, right on. Okay. Now, for the first time in 220 some odd years, a strike is looming at Rutgers, and we got two organizers in that effort to secure justice for folks trying to work at Rutgers. The justice that they do as workers. Ihsan and Whitney, both. I want you to both. We didn't have time to do the background that I usually do with the guests before I bring them on the show, because we were just more interested in making sure we got you on before your action on 28th. The 28th is an important day of action for Rutgers faculty and other workers at Rutgers. So we really wanted to lift that up. So let's do this. I want each of you to introduce yourselves in a context of this labor struggle and in the context of your own particular history and your own particular station at Rutgers, right? Well, I'll start this way. Class of 84, former vice chair of Black Organization of Students, used to sit in and disrupt that campus regularly, right? My generation was a generation that launched into the anti-apartheid movement in terms of how divestment went down back in the 1970s and the 1980s. And I was on campus for the first time in a long time just this afternoon talking to law students. And that was a trip, because Rutgers hardly ever asked me to come back for anything. Right? So I have my own Rutgers history. So I just wanted to give that. And that's the way for y'all to introduce yourselves. And let's jump into what's happening on the 28th, what's looming. Ihsan, you go first.
All right. Hi.
There we go. We got your sound now. We got you.
Yeah, it's working. So sorry about that. My name is Ihsan. I am a PhD student at the School of Criminal Justice here at Rutgers Newark. I do a lot of work on environmental crime, specifically here in Newark, and how historically the city has been treated. I have been working with our union for a few years now, since the pandemic started, and there was a great need for us to be supporting each other and showing solidarity with each other and providing actual material support for one another during a really difficult time. I am a student. I'm a worker. I teach undergrads. I love what I do and hate that the university is pushing us to this.
Very disappointed that it is. Very disappointed that it is. Whitney, go ahead and introduce yourself in your own way.
Yeah, sure thing. And thank you for having us. Thanks for making space for the labor movement here. It really means a lot. My name's Whit. I'm an associate professor in the history department at Rutgers Newark. I write about the history of sexuality and political history and film mostly. I've been here for about, my God, 13 years now. I live in the Ironbound, and I've been a member of the union ever since I got here. And, you know, I think the one thing I would add quick just in setting the stage is I'm a tenured professor now, which is a very fortunate place to be. And I recognize that. But before getting here, I basically worked at every level of academia up to associate professor. And so I've been untenured. I've been an adjunct. I've been a one-year visiting assistant professor, as well as a grad worker. And so, you know, one thing that I think really means a lot to me as a worker at Rutgers is the ways that our union has really put a lot of effort, like Ihsan said, to cultivate solidarity, you know, between and among the different sort of staffing levels at the university and the different positions people fill, which is something we can definitely talk more about. But just as by way of introduction, yeah, that's where I'm coming from. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. So what's happening? What's happening with everybody at Rutgers, and how did we get to this space where y'all have to really look at going on strike? What's happening, man? What's happening? So talk to me, y'all.
Right. I mean, this has been happening for a long time, but I guess we can use the pandemic as our anchor to what's happening right now. So the pandemic hits, and the university immediately announces that they're experiencing a financial shortfall, and that, you know, they basically cry poverty. They can't give us raises. They have to freeze jobs across the campuses. Grads shouldn't expect the raises that they were promised, and so on and so forth. And that's just like factually untrue, right? Just categorically false. We have coaches that get paid in the millions of dollars to coach a basketball team, right? And we have administrators that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, while grad workers and PTLs are having to take second and third jobs in order to survive, right? And we kind of like start from there, and we push back against the university. We tell them, you know, you're choking our departments. You created this financial structure that doesn't even let our schools and our departments support us, and we need help. Like, this is, our grad students need help. Our undergrads are suffering. Our part-time lecturers are suffering. Our full-time faculty, our staff members, everyone across job categories is suffering. And yet we saw them cut corners at every given opportunity, from our mental health counseling centers that were decimated early in the pandemic. And these are counselors that provide support to community members, not just Rutgers students or Rutgers employees, right? These are folks that work with children, right? And they weren't being provided any support, and they were being inundated with insane amounts of stress, with very little financial backing or very little institutional backing. And any attempt on our part as workers to call it out or to tell them, you know, this is unacceptable and we demand more and we deserve more, was met with, oh, but we're broke. We're broke. We're sorry, we can't help. It's a pandemic. Everyone's having a hard time, especially us. I don't know if you have more to add on that.
Well, let's. I want to go further, and I'm gonna let the historian big picture this, right? Go. What I want you to go from where she was to what we're seeing around the country, right? Because there are other protests at other universities around similar issues, right? So I call the adjunctation, right, of labors. At a time when our kids are almost afraid to want to go to school because they don't see it as an investment that's going to allow them to stabilize themselves, right? So just because, you know, the pandemic as a mental health trick, there are layers to this, right? So I want you to take a shot now at giving us the bigger picture of the context in which we're talking about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to. I mean, there's so many different layers of this, so cut me off if I go too long. But I think, you know, just picking up where Ihsan left off, I mean, one context is definitely the pandemic era, which has really sparked a revitalization of the labor movement, I think, right? And like you said, you know, you see that everywhere. You see that from Starbucks workers unionizing to the Teamsters at UPS who are gearing up for a potential strike. But you really, really see that in academia in the last few years. And, to build off something you just mentioned, I mean, what I think we would call the adjunctification of labor in academia, I mean, is something that, it's a chickens coming home to roost situation, right? I mean, under conditions of austerity in the last 40 years, universities have across the boards cut costs by relying on, oh, sorry, I have an aggressive cat here.
Sorry, I got one too.
But as a cost-cutting measure, a lot of austerity programs have fallen on workers, and particularly faculty, teachers, professors. It's cheaper and more disposable to hire adjunct labor, people who work part-time with no job security, very limited benefits, generally not health insurance, under really exploitative conditions. I've been an adjunct, and plenty of my friends at Rutgers are adjuncts, and they're just not paid a fair and living wage.
Yeah, Professor, you should pause right there, because I've worked with CUNY, and it's very challenging to see adjuncts finish their semester and then file for public assistance. So explain it.
Yeah, no, it's a disgraceful labor condition. And, again, I've been there. I can tell you exactly what it's like when you're an adjunct. You might teach one class, you might teach two classes. A lot of the time you might teach two classes at one university, two classes at another university. You're running back and forth constantly. When I was doing this in Los Angeles, I was driving back and forth from UCLA to Cal State Fullerton, which is not a fun drive. And people here are hoofing it on the subway from, like you said, CUNY down to Rutgers to NYU. It's not a livable condition to be in. And so, part of our struggle as a union is to unify the workers at Rutgers under one union. And this is already supported by the workers themselves, by us. Right now, grad workers and full-time faculty are in a shared bargaining unit. We want to merge with the adjunct faculty who are in a separate bargaining unit into one union, which will, certainly empower all of us, but the administration is obstructing it as part of our negotiations that have been going on for nearly a year now. The administration has been dragging this out. They're not recognizing the unification of our union, which, all of us across the bargaining units want. And there's no reason for them to be doing that. Maybe I'll just say one more thing quick and then can pass it back to you. It's frustrating to see this in New Jersey. You'd expect this in Florida, where you've got Ron DeSantis, going after teaching Black history, teaching LGBTQ history. He's certainly anti-labor. That wouldn't be a shock. It wouldn't be a shock if this were happening under Chris Christie, Republican anti-labor governor, right? But this is happening under Phil Murphy, who, ostensibly is a progressive Democrat. He, wants to show himself as having credibility.
We got a legislature full of punks. I've been throwing rocks at him for the last several years. Ain't doing a damn thing. Go ahead, keep talking.
You said it better than I could there. But so, we've got Phil Murphy, and then, president of Rutgers University, we've got Jonathan Holloway. Here's a guy who, certainly bears really liberal progressive credentials. He's a U.S. historian. He writes about race in American history. He writes about Jim Crow. He's edited a new edition of W.E.B. Du Bois's The Souls of Black Folk. He's somebody who has no excuse for not understanding, what the labor struggle means, but he's really just not delivering here. He talks about Rutgers as a beloved community, but what he's letting us do is negotiate with a team that's headed by Chris Christie appointees. And, he's not stepping in on that. He's been really frustratingly dismissive of the union in various different capacities. He's brushed off our concerns. And it's just, as a U.S. historian, I want to feel some solidarity with President Holloway. He's literally in my field as a scholar, and I respect him as an academic. But, it's just enormously frustrating that he's standing in the way of justice here. And, we really want to see that change. We would love for the community to call on him and for him to listen to, what workers and what the community here in New Jersey wants.
Professor Holloway, go ahead, hold on, Doc, is the first African-American president of the university. Right, but there's class struggle even within our ranks too, so we need to be real clear about that. And it's unfortunate that we're hearing this, and we wish brother would come through a little better. Go ahead, Donna, raise your point. I'm sorry. I just want to give everybody back.
When it comes to community, and the community always has a part to play, and maybe that would be a campaign, a phone call campaign. And talk about that. How could the community help with possibly making a case to the president's office?
Yeah, so let's jump ahead. Let's jump ahead to what's happening on the 28th. Yeah, sum up so everybody understands from a very basic way what your demands are, right? Where you're at with your demands and your negotiation, right? Why what's happening on the 28th, why that's important, and how much time do you have left before you make that decision to actually have to go there and go on strike, or hopefully that the university will act like the university is supposed to act.
Right. Wait, can I take this one? All right. So our demands are plenty, right? But we are demanding a living wage for grad students. We are demanding that our part-time lecturers, our adjunct faculty are getting paid equitably, right? Getting paid for the work that they do, for the work that they put in as instructors at a university, right? Across our job titles, there are demands for our mental health faculty and our medical faculty. We are seeing merit demands for our full-time faculty and other faculty members. And all that has culminated right now over the past about 8 months, over 8 months, right? Where we have been asking and asking and asking and bargaining in good faith with Rutgers management and having actions where we bring attention to what's going on, from our grad students living in absolute poverty to our PTLs having to take second and third and fourth jobs, to our staff members who have zero contract stability or security across our 3 campuses, right? And all that has culminated, as I said, over the last 8 months. On Tuesday, the 28th, we are having a teach-in with multiple panels with a strike school. Our 10 a.m. teach-in is going to have Chris Smalls, which is very, very exciting, of Amazon.
I've been trying to find that young man. I'm going to come around just to connect with
him. Please come.
Smalls is an organizer from Elizabeth, New Jersey.
I know.
Hell for Amazon and Staten Island. On to that. Keep talking, baby. I'm sorry.
It is so exciting. No, absolutely. So Chris Smalls will be attending the 10 a.m. panel. Other union members across the United States will be speaking. Later, we're having a panel that includes union members from our job category, so PTLs, grads, full-time faculty, researchers, staff members, and so on. We're going to be hearing from people from New Labor, and we're going to be having a strike school. So we're asking a lot of instructors to basically cancel your class and bring your students to us, right? Because the undergrads, what they need is at stake as well in this instance, right? As Whit was saying, like students are also on board with what's happening. The majority of students are. When I told my undergrads last semester that I got paid less than $5,000 to teach 75 of them on my own without any sort of institutional support, my students were ashamed, right? And at the end of the year, when they submitted their surveys to the department, many of my students wrote out, pay the professors better, right? Because they don't have, I'm a first gen university student. I had no idea who was teaching me, if they were a tenured professor or if they were a PTL or if they were a grad student. I told my students, I'm a grad student at this university. I work full-time for this university. I produce research for this university, right? And I teach 75 of you on my own, and I get paid less than $5,000, and I don't get health insurance or any sort of benefit from the university, right? How are we expected to, our students deserve better. That was a tangent off of Tuesday, sorry.
No, that's speaking to conditions. That's right. All right. Come on back.
Our students deserve better, right? Like I had a student I asked them for, constructive criticism on the class. And one of my students said, you started off giving us really strong feedback in the beginning of the semester. And as the semester went on, you kind of stopped doing that as much. And I told my student very truthfully, I couldn't keep up with 75 students on my own. Right. So I had to cut corners as an instructor, and they deserve better than that. Our undergrads deserve better than that. Rutgers can't keep saying that we have in NORC we have one of the most diverse campuses, undergraduate populations in the United States, and then not take into consideration the racial and gender dynamics that equals,
It's
right?
an old argument, baby. I go back to the 70s. I'm telling
you. Exactly. They can't keep using that as a token of diversity and look at us, we're so fantastic, and then not doing justice by their undergrads or any sort of worker at their university, right? It's so we're talking about that on the 28th on Tuesday. People are bringing their undergrads. We will have food. We will have coffee. We will have hot chocolate and rain ponchos in case it rains. And we will rally outside of the Board of Governors, right? Because we have demands and we demand to be heard. And we demand that our university bargain with us in good faith.
Now break down the time and the place.
We will meet at Conklin Hall 100, 10 a.m. That's when the first panel begins. Please come through. And if our rooms overflow, we will be live streaming the event, right? So please come through. Please eat. Please join us. We will be so excited to have everyone.
Conklin Hall is a historic hall that was taken over back in '69. It became the Black Organization of Students. I'm an old boss warrior, right?
That's amazing.
Okay? And so that's hollow ground for those of us who are about to struggle on that campus.
That's
right?
amazing.
So, we definitely look forward to that. So let's so wrap up. We're getting ready to wrap this segment up. Give us some of your closing thoughts that you want. What takeaways do you want our audience to have as we get ready for Tuesday?
Yeah, sure. I can jump in on that really quickly. I mean, one thing people should hear is numbers. I mean, if people might wonder, it might be a reasonable question, right? Where's the money supposed to come from, right? To pay faculty and to pay grad workers. Rutgers right now has a new high unrestricted reserves of $816.6 million. It has flourished during the pandemic. Right. It runs a $53 million.
Off them lies. Say that number again.
So we have unrestricted reserves of $816 million. It would cost about $30 million to get some pay equity for part-time lecturers and adjuncts. Meanwhile, one more number, we run a $53 million budget deficit on athletics. So we can throw money. We can just throw endless millions of dollars.
Most of them, and they still have a whole lot of money left over.
So the money is there. That's what one thing people should know. And then the other thing I would say is just that our focus as a union is on the most vulnerable and most exploited. And so we really want, even those of us who are tenured, who have job security and health insurance, we want that life for everyone. At Rutgers and more broadly socially, all workers deserve security and health insurance and a living wage. And so we're doing our best to make that a reality at Rutgers. And we'd love for folks in the community to show up at this action. And, just your presence alone would
solidarity, baby, is the word. Right? And to both of you. Now, I'm going to just say something to both of you. If I wish I could be young again, I'd love to be in each of your classes. You both have the little that I know about you, I'm very impressed with, right? We got a history professor ain't afraid of the S word. I'm loving that shit. Straight up. I'm loving that, baby, right? And working in women and gender studies, there are too few males willing to go there, right? So I want to appreciate that, and you, young man, I really appreciate that, right? I'm trying to lift up one of our African traditions is the Ifa tradition, our spiritual traditions. And as I came to that, it impressed me how feminist it is coming out of traditional spaces, uplifting and healing a whole lot of pain, formerly colonized spaces. And there's a real need for men to be able to embrace that side of their humanity and to go there and to dare to be the storm, as the great Orisha Oya is a struggle and transformation. So I'm tipping my hats out to both of you. Now let me just ask you each of the questions. This is a hip hop talk show. So we have a ritual question that we ask everybody when they come aboard, and that is, as we go off, who is your favorite hip hop artist or group, or who is it that you particularly are listening to right now, so you're able to do what you need to do for yourselves?
I've been listening to a lot of Pip Millet. she's a British R&B singer, and she has a new album called Healing, and it's beautiful.
Wow.
And she kind of works through her mental health struggles and talks about wanting to do better and be better. Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of Pit.
Right on, right on, right on.
I'll go old school. Yeah, for me, you said solidarity. Nothing to me said solidarity like Public Enemy's phrase, "It takes a nation of millions to hold us back." So that's what I'm going with.
Beautiful.
Right on to both of y'all. Right on to both of you.
Zai, before they leave, can I answer that question?
Huh?
The question, can I answer the question?
I just asked it.
I think.
Sorry. Sorry.
Huh? I don't know.
Can I answer the question on the screen?
I asked both of them. Yeah, he said,
Okay,
Public Enemy takes a nation to hold us back.
Okay, thank you.
We're in and out. We've got some tech issues, so forgive us with that. We'll get to it. And then we got the great Ike Nahem get ready to come up, and Andy Richards gave you a shot. Andy actually was asking you. Yes, Andy, yes. That's what she said, right? And Aaron was shouting you out and calling out Holloway all through the segment on the chat. So we're sounding the drum. We're sounding the drum. Right? Tuesday is D-Day. We'll see you in Conklin, and we'll see you in the streets. Appreciate both of you. And solidarity is a word, right? We'll see you on Tuesday. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. We get ready for this next segment. We got a hell of a conference coming up on Cuba, and I've had some young folks on in the last few weeks, talking about their respective trips to Cuba with Brigada Venceremos, the Venceremos Brigade, and T went with a different delegation. She went with a different delegation, right? And Andy Richards is in the chat lifting up some good stuff and whatnot. Yes, thank you, Andy. We appreciate that. Right? Ike, let's first tell us just quickly what's happening second weekend of March, what the conference is, where it's going to be, and then let's talk about why Cuba is important.
Thank you, Zaid. The conference, it's the International US-Cuba Normalization Conference, and it's taking place at the Fordham University Lincoln Center campus, March 11th and 12th. If somebody can put in the chat or equivalent thereof, US-Cuba Normalization Conference, one word, .org, you'll see the wonderful program that we have over the course of the 2 days. Great speakers, panelists that is promoting the beautiful cause of stopping U.S. aggression and sanctions and blockade against the revolutionary Cuba, and because of the fact that it hates the example of Cuba in the Western Hemisphere and around the world. And I'm sure we're going to talk about that, but we really encourage people to register, to attend. You can attend physically if you're in the New York City area, or up and down the East Coast, or you can attend virtually. We have a very ambitious program of live streaming, but look at the program. Thank you. I see it's in there. And join us for that day. Thank you.
And now let's back up a little bit, because this is a teachable space. It's an intergenerational hip hop audience, right? Some understand what we're talking about when we talk about Cuba with solidarity. Some folks are absolutely clueless, right? There's a background to this. Normalization. We are in a situation where Cuba is the subject of a boycott that is almost as old as I am, and I'm in my 60s now, right? Okay. Right? 1962. The so-called Missile Crisis Day. Cuba has been under the foot of a blockade that the whole world has turned against for decades. Why don't we unpack that baggage for a minute, just so folks understand that?
Well, this history is very important. and a new generation, and this is going to be registered at the conference. We have a wonderful panel, Youth and Cuba Solidarity, that is going to register the new generation of young people of different nationalities, but especially among African American youth, but young people that are learning about and inspired by the Cuban Revolution, a new generation that's committing to fight against the blockade. But this is a struggle that, as you said, I'm even older than you, and the Cuban Revolution took place in 1959. After failing to overthrow it by other means, they established the blockade, extraterritorial embargo, sanctions, terrorism, war, biological warfare documented by the U.S. Senate in the 1970s. I mean, we can go on and on of this aggression and bellicosity and hostility by the U.S. government, Democrats and Republicans, for 60 years. Slight retreat in the second term of the Obama administration, which was reversed under Trump, with new measures continued under Biden. But as you say, there is a contradiction, which is that the policy is never been more isolated in the hemisphere, around the world. It's hated, votes at the UN, but at the same time, it continues and causes great distress in Cuba. And let me say one other thing. That continuity is particularly real and pronounced in the African American community. We can go back to the measures taken in the early years of the Cuban Revolution to destroy Jim Crow discrimination in Cuba, years before the U.S. passed the Civil Rights Act. We can talk about the tremendous decisive role that Cuba played in the destruction of apartheid and the liberation of Southern Africa. All of these issues going back when Malcolm and Fidel met in 1962. All of this, there's been a continuity, overwhelmingly U.S. public opinion as opposed to the blockade, but it's particularly sharp and resonant among African Americans because of that history, and more of the truth is known in that community. And that's going to also be reflected at the conference. One of our panels is Cuba and the African diaspora, with a really great list of speakers that are going to talk about Cuba, the Caribbean, Africa, and African American struggles, and tie them up with the history of the Cuban Revolution.
Well, I'm gonna tell you that we need to take beat on some of that, right? Because a lot of folks may not be aware that our generation, we came of age through all of that, right? We have a whole new generation that does not know necessarily what apartheid was, right? Does not know just how violent and vicious and widespread that the havoc of that apartheid created throughout Africa, but particularly in Southern Africa, right? Folks might know that Garvey's echo back to Africa, the Cuban example of that is absolutely profound and covers every layer of what that kind of return could look like. And the idea of men coming from Cuba, many as volunteers, right? Not just medical professionals, but also in battle, right? And particularly our Cuban brothers and sisters who are of African descent were absolutely proud and willing to do what exactly they did and interrupt, which was people may not realize that the old apartheid regime was the military superpower of Africa.
What Cuba did,
that heroic intervention of Cuba answering the call of African people, right, was absolutely heroic against some tremendous odds, right? And they made themselves willingly made themselves vulnerable to their own national security when they did it.
And it completely changed the trajectory and history of Africa. with the defeat of apartheid and of that state and forcing that to back down and retreat for Namibia to win its independence, this laid the conditions for Africa to emerge and play whatever role politically in the world politics, the emergence of Africa. And this is recognized in Africa. Every year we go, a lot of us, to the UN and watch the debate. Every year the U.S. is completely isolated in the vote. And some of the most eloquent voices are from the African continent, Namibia, South Africa, Angola, that saw firsthand the decisive role that revolutionary Cuba played. But also now in the Caribbean, voices are being raised. Like I said earlier, the U.S. policy is more isolated than it has ever been. So that makes those of us that are more conscious, those of us that are friends of Cuba, that love Cuba's example, this is the time for us to step up the pressure, because the U.S. policy is, although it continues, we think it's more vulnerable now because of its isolation, that we can add to that pressure worldwide and show our solidarity with Cuba. And let me say something else. The U.S. is engaged politically in a propaganda war. It's not only the sanctions, it's not only the economic war, it's a propaganda war. In recent years, after the CIA manufactured these demonstrations a couple of years ago, you may remember, the U.S. propaganda tried to paint Cuba as racist and tried to highlight a couple of rappers supposedly here and there. This propaganda war. We're going to answer that at this conference. We're going to answer all the lies, and we are going to present a unity across the spectrum that's remarkable, that only Cuba is one of the few issues that can bring about such unity. Groups that normally wouldn't even like to be in the same room with each other are working together across the political spectrum against the blockade. And this is an example of what we can accomplish if we do work together. And I think it's going to be a great weekend. I really encourage your readers and your listeners to sign up, register, and attend.
In terms of some of
so,
go ahead, Donna. You had that chance to ask. Go ahead. Come on in.
So, Mr. Santana, why didn't President Biden make one of his first actions to undo? President Biden opened Cuba up. Trump closed it. Why didn't Biden come back and just open it up?
Well, I think that at the beginning of, Trump moved very quickly to reverse the limited positive steps that Obama took. And they were very limited, but he moved to reverse them and deepen the blockade with, they say, 243 measures. A lot of people thought that when Biden was elected, that since he had campaigned on changing that they thought there would be at least some alleviation. But on the contrary, Biden actually deepened, kept everything that Trump did, and even added some of his own. So the question is, why did that happen? In my opinion, the U.S. rulers, the ruling rich, who have always hated Cuba, but they felt under Obama that they needed to retreat because the policy was so unpopular and so on. But they felt that at the beginning of 2021, especially with the pandemic, they saw that Cuba was vulnerable. The Cuban tourism industry collapsed. All the foreign exchange that they were getting for that, which they financed, free healthcare, free education, internationalist missions, everything. It dropped radically, and they saw that Cuba would be vulnerable. And to them, that was much more important than any humanitarian instinct or any of that. They don't think like that. That's like Malcolm said, if you're talking humanitarianism, you're speaking a language they don't understand. That's not what motivates them. But they did see politically, they did see that Cuba appeared vulnerable. So this was the opportunity to turn the screw in harder. And they thought that this time maybe we'll succeed in finally getting rid of that rotten communist regime, blah, blah, blah. It didn't work. And now they're back to square one in a sense. and we'll see what happens.
One of the great stories of the pandemic that reflects the incredible spirit and character of the Cuban people that I want people to appreciate as we have this discussion, get ready for that Solidarity Conference, is that in spite of that vulnerability that you just described, Cuba and its legendary international medical solidarity missions helped stabilize communities in over 40 countries.
That's right.
During the pandemic, when they were most vulnerable, came up with their own vaccine.
Right on.
In spite of the stranglehold of a blockade that should be in the garbage can of
Just
history.
think what they could accomplish without the Yankee boot on their neck. And that's why it's on their neck. That's why, because they don't want that example. Just think, I mean, what you've described, this is, in spite of that, they deepened the blockade. Despite Cuba's heroic effort around the world to send medical missions, that is when they chose to deepen the blockade. That tells you about the morality of the United States government, Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah, that's an oxymoron, the morality of the U.S. government. We got to laugh at that. In the few minutes that we have, let's talk about a couple of things. One, what is some of the tactical solidarity that we need to be thinking about and looking at in order to try and move the needle further the way we want it to go?
Well, we have.
And I'll get for existence. There has been a movement to do some resolutions in city governments around the country to call for the end of the blockade.
Well, we've put forward 4 main areas of work that people can work on separately or united, supporting each other's efforts in 4 main arenas. One is travel. Go to Cuba, see it yourself. Anybody that goes there, they come back, they're going to be a different person, and they're going to be committed to this cause. 2 is any resolutions in your city, in your union, in your church, in your mosque, in your synagogue, whatever, get that passed, go on record against the blockade. I think Newark should be an easy one to get. If I can encroach on your territory there. You have
I don't assume that as easy as it should be, but it should happen. You're absolutely right.
I mean, we got one in front of the New York City Council now, and we're up.
We had Charles Barron on a few weeks ago talking about it. That's right.
Council member Charles Barron is pushing it, so we're hopeful. It's been passed in dozens of cities, Chicago, lots of Bay Area. But anyway, that's the second arena. The third arena is solidarity aid, material aid to help Cuba, stuff that IFCO Pastors for Peace does. And then the fourth, very important, is street actions. We need to get into the streets. Every month there's caravans. October 6th, the Caribbean community has called for international demonstrations. That's the day that a U.S.-based terrorist shot down a Cuban airliner in 1976, murdered 76 people. No justice at all. None. The guy was in the United States. Everybody knew. The CIA knew that he did it. And he walked the streets of Miami to his dying day without any punishment. Those actions, then the UN actions. So all those arenas of work, we want to promote all of those and increase as much pressure as we can to add our voice to the voice of the world and get this damn blockade over.
Indeed. Donnie, you want to ask anything?
No, in the beginning, you talk about that you be going to Cuba anytime soon?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. What was that?
Different ways people can go to Cuba.
Yes. Actually, there are the United States government, of course, it's very contradictory as always. There's always some loopholes, and people have taken advantage of them to get to Cuba with or without legal cover. And there are actually one of the few things that Biden has done that's positive is that it has become somewhat easier for people to travel. and to travel to different cities, not only Havana. And a lot of people are going, a lot of brigades are going. Zaid mentioned Venceremos Brigade, IFCO Pastors for Peace, Witness for Peace, NNOC. There's a labor brigade being organized. So there's many ways that people can go now. And if you go to the conference, that's a whole workshop on that. So we definitely encourage people to take advantage of any loopholes, go to Cuba and see it for yourself.
One of the things I want to lift up, when last time I was in Cuba, it's been a long time, I have to bear witness, and I'm overdue in going back. I was on a Venceremos delegation with a young lady by the name of Gail Walker.
Oh, yeah.
That's how Gail and I met, right?
Oh, wow.
And Gail's father is from my hometown. Their families. I grew up with their family. Didn't realize who he was.
What town is that, Zaid?
Huh?
What town is that?
That was Roselle. I grew up on 9th Avenue in Roselle.
Oh, okay.
And there were Walkers right up the street. Cheryl Walker, Reverend Walker's cousin.
Because I know Lucius used to have a ministry in Milwaukee, and so I thought maybe. Yeah, go ahead.
No, this is Jersey stuff, right?
Okay.
But on that delegation, we literally sat down and mapped out what became the U.S. French shipment caravan. We did it right there, right? So real solidarity has taken place, and they have been doing that French shipment caravan now for decades consistently. And Lucius Walker is iconic to the Cuban people as a beacon of solidarity because of what he did. So I just
and he's the moral beacon for the whole solidarity movement. What Lucius did in the early 90s was really revive the movement, and it's the origins to the degree that we've advanced a lot in the last years even. That continuity goes back to Lucius. We now have a more united movement than we've ever had.
I should say that's the caravan that is not just rooted in humanitarian aid, but also in civil disobedience, right?
Yeah.
Because the law says you're supposed to apply for a license when you do that kind of stuff going to Cuba. We said we ain't getting down like that. You try and stop us, we're gonna make some noise, right? And we've had our share of battles at the border, right? Over that. I remember one year they confiscated one of the school buses that was transporting the aid in, and we had this big campaign all over the country. Who's afraid of the yellow school bus?
Right.
And Lucas and
you know, it's one of the signs of how vulnerable they know they are politically, is the fact that they generally don't want to see the policy challenged, even in the courts, even in their own courts, because they don't want that to have to answer our arguments, because they know that we have the moral high ground. And as Fidel said, keeping the moral high ground in politics is crucial. And Malcolm understood that too. And we have it on this issue. So they just want to bury it. They want to not cover it in the media, even though they know that the policy is isolated. But we're going to continue to be as public and as in their face as we can be, because it's important. It's important to all of us that are progressive or revolutionary or think we're revolutionary or whatever, to defend the trench of revolutionary Cuba, because that's our best trench really in the world today. If we want to answer the propaganda of the capitalists and the neoliberals and the imperialists, we can point to Cuba as to an alternative. We can point to their medical internationalism. We can point to the whole history, and we need to, because we need to draw those lessons for the new generation that's engaged in struggle in the U.S. I was listening to your previous panels and the union struggles. You know, we have a great panel on Cuba and the labor movement. Anyway, if you don't stop me, Zaid, I'll go on forever.
But we got a couple minutes left. Several things. And I'm talking now to our audience, right? Because this is a Jersey, a national audience, but it's Jersey based. And Jersey is the beachheads for hostility coming from the old guard of Cuba that was defeated in the revolution, the old fascist guard that was defeated back in 1959, right? Senator Menendez is the embodiment of that. So, we need to really, there's work that needs to step up in Jersey. It's not just Florida. We have some real challenges with raising this question in New Jersey. So folks who want to do solidarity, the time and place to do that is indeed. We're going to get ready to go into another segment, right? Let me just ask you two things. Restate for us, of course, time and place. I put the link in the chat. We will send that out, of course, on our page when we finish. Share with us some of the highlights, some of the folks who are going to come through, right? Mayor Baraka has spoken at the conference a couple years ago, right?
Well, yes, Rosemary Mealy is speaking. Gail Walker is speaking. We have a great delegation of people from Cuba, leaders of the Cuban Women's Federation and others that are coming in. Professor August Nimps. We have, so many young people from different organizations. Carlos Lasso. Let me just close by saying one thing about Jersey. I think that public opinion in Jersey is way past Senator Menendez and the Cuban counter-revolutionaries in Union. I think that we can isolate them, and he does not speak, I don't think, for the people of New Jersey with his rotten politics on this question.
Oh, whoa. But did we ask?
No, I'm going to let you ask the ritual question.
No, I'll let you ask it.
Go ahead and ask it.
Because of the echoes I need.
Oh, all right, okay. All right, now you and I, our generation is, we kind of older than most on the show, but this is quiet as kept. This is a hip hop talk show, so we ask all of our guests, especially when they're first time on the show, who is your favorite hip hop artist or group, or is there anyone or anything that you're listening to right now in the land of hip hop that gets you going?
Well, I'm glad I was listening in, so I sort of had a hint that I was going to get this question. So I'm going to first say that to show how old I am, I go back to when I lived in D.C. I used to like KRS-One as well as Public Enemy. So what do you think about that?
That's hip hop at its highest heights.
Yeah, but I'm really not up on the genre, but I do know that in Cuba, hip hop is very powerful and genre. And I also know that we're going to be at our Saturday night event at the Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz Center. We're going to have a couple of really good hip hop acts, RGB Girls and DJ Spirit Child, as well as Bombayo.
Yeah, he's one of our babies.
So, that's another thing that people will want to come to. But
yeah, I'll get back to you on
Public Enemy, of course, for the politics.
Great share. Good to have you on, Ike. I'll have you back again, be sure. As long as I'm here, definitely. This is whenever you need to sound the drum, holler at me. You got a mic here to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Zaid. Thank you, Donna.
Conference, right? Time to end that rotten blockade, Cuba C blockade, no, right? Right on. Good to see you, Ike.
Take care.
Professor Carter.
What's up, Saeed? How are you?
How you doing there, Queen? What's happening? Donna, come on, introduce yourself.
Professor Carter.
I'm fine, you guys. I'm just living my life, serving my people. That's why we're here. You don't get to be an elder, or why should you be an elder if you're not going to prepare the next generation to take your place?
That's right.
Professor
Carter. Go ahead.
Who thinks she's retired?
No. Really, I tell people all the time, the term retirement has nothing to do with me. I completed my paid service at Essex County College, but I'm still serving young people, everybody under 50 and under. The other ones should know better.
Are you still with the paralegal program?
No, actually, they did hire someone else. I've been, trying to help her out to make sure that there's some continuity between me. We want to save, make sure that program, because it was the whole purpose of the program at the Newark campus was to ensure that people who did not have the opportunity would have the opportunity, particularly from that particular population. And so that was my charge. And so now, it's time to move to the next level. They have a really good person, Miss Katrina Pennington. She's a wife to one of the Pennington brothers, who all three of them are lawyers. One of them, I think, is the BA for the city. And the other one, yeah. Exactly. So, basically she's moving, but I'm still in touch with students from 20 years ago. They're available to the students who are currently here. It's a real family. As a matter of fact, it reminds me so much of how I grew up in the projects, where it was about we and not me. So, I'm not really the person who made that happen. It was the dynamics between me and the students that made it happen to get the American Bar Association approval, which indicates to the world that our students at Essex County College in the paralegal program are competitive with students around the country, in Canada. Also, American University has a school over in Kenya. So they're as competitive, if not better. So anyway, so much for that. So regarding retirement, the word has nothing to do with me. I feel this way. We're going to be dead for a long time, so I'm going to bang this out. Anyway.
Donna, you're muted. You're muted, Donna.
You came on tonight, and you're going to talk about two topics. What's going on in Mississippi? And civics.
All right. So yeah, they're connected. Basically,
right.
For those who don't know, and you may or may not know that what's happening in Mississippi is that the governor and all the Republicans have decided they're just going to take Jackson, Mississippi. And the mayor actually called it. It is apartheid. Definitely. When you have other people controlling your resources, it is apartheid. The problem is bigger than that. It's not Jackson, Mississippi, and what they're going to do. It's what Black folks in America are going to do to make sure that whatever they need happens. Now, this goes back to economics. And I know a lot of young people under 50 are really into this entrepreneurship, primarily because most of them don't know that there were at least 1,200 self-sufficient Black communities that existed that we know of. Some were so small that they were settlements, and they were so small that people actually killed folks off and replaced them with lakes. So, we have a history from the moment we left, and sometimes during the course before the existence of chattel slavery, where we were self-sufficient. And we do know the Nation of Islam had said like 70, 80 years ago, we need to do for self. But doing for self didn't mean doing for self individual. It meant doing for self in terms of masses and in the collective. But what has happened is that from my point of view, my opinion is that when affirmative action came, and I'm not saying integration didn't have its problems, but for the most part, when affirmative action came, what happened is we moved from we to me. We, while, primarily white women, and I'm gonna go back to Mississippi because this has a lot to do with it. White women basically benefited from affirmative action. However, there are those of us professional class, the managerial class, and the political class, many of them have benefited from that. The problem is once we got those opportunities, many of us, we basically started moving away from those skills, talents, and the history and the information that allowed us to survive for 600 years on Turtle Island. If you don't know what Turtle Island is, and I'm sure Saeed knows, and hopefully Donna, Turtle Island is when indigenous people called from the tip of Canada to the bottom of South America. After going through the kidnapping, before the kidnapping, all the way over through the transatlantic slave trade, I like to say the kidnapping of property, of people who, for all intents and purposes, property, what happens is that all those skills and talents, everything we knew, everything we passed down, affirmative action became a competition for it. And so as we move, or we were allowed to move from just, getting what you need to now you bought into this, I call it the capitalist conveniences, right? You got hooked on the capitalist conveniences. And so it makes it very easy for people to play on our children because, and we'll talk about civics later in terms of how that happened. But to get back to Jackson, Mississippi, we have to think in terms of we to address that. We're going to have to kind of let go of this whole, I call it again, capitalist conveniences, or decide if we want to do that, or do we want to concentrate in making sure that what happened in Mississippi to Jackson and what's happening in Jackson doesn't get worse than it is, and it's not expanded throughout the country. So, you know, this is a we thing that has to happen. Individually, we have to decide, you know, what's more important, because that's an example of where we're going if we don't stop it. And it, you know, they passed that bill. It is apartheid. So what are we going to do about it? We're going to sit back and just let it happen and then move to some other place and some other places.
Well, Dr. Carter, pause right there.
Well, yeah, tell us about the bill.
Well, before we get to the bill,
go ahead.
Wait, before we get to the post this last presidential election, there were probably 21 states that passed legislation that said that simply, if the states didn't agree with happen or the outcome, that they can overturn. So what would have happened if we got 30 states to do that?
Donna, I'm sorry.
But I'm just saying
that you're fading in and out, so I can't hear you. Say that again.
Zay, could you repeat it simply because my echo?
Yeah, your echo is a struggle. I only heard part of it too. Try and ask it again. Just try and ask it a little softer.
Okay. After the presidential election, approximately 21 states passed legislation that said if they were not, for whatever reason, happy with the outcome, that they could overturn their state result. So what if they had gotten 30? And then fast forward to what's going on in Jackson. Now they do the same thing, and now they get 30. We're on our way, and now you got the representative who's talking about states not being a part of the United States. Basically, I'm trying to think of the word when you say that.
You're talking about like Texas, where they leave.
Yes.
Okay, where they're leaving. Now, I really couldn't hear, but I think what you're saying is that you're talking about states' rights.
That's states' rights. Yeah, basically, yes.
10th Amendment.
But states' rights, still, they just acting on those rights and taking those states' rights and overturning federal action, meaning the presidential was a federal vote. But if 21 states or 30 states did not agree with that federal outcome, and you get a majority that said we don't agree, then you would have had Trump back in office.
Not necessarily, if I understand you right. Basically,
but that was the goal. That was the goal, is what I'm saying.
Okay. It depends on what the law is and how it's interpreted. We have a Supreme Court who could potentially interpret that, because, you know, and go back to Martin Luther King, just because it's legal don't mean it's right. Otherwise, we still be in the segregated South. Not that we're not. We just see, you just talked about Mississippi, right? So for all intents and purposes, the federal law supersedes any state whenever there's a conflict between the two of them. The issue is how it's going to be interpreted. It's going to be interpreted where it's a conflict, or it's going to be interpreted where it's totally different. And that goes to the courts. And we have a court now that potentially could say something like that, you know, that there's not a conflict here at all. So therefore, the feds do not supersede the state, and it's a whole different area. Now, when it comes to voting, then the states can determine what the process is, right? Even though you have a right to vote, right? But the states can determine what the process is going to be in their state. Like in New Jersey, we decided during the presidential election and during COVID, right? The governor said, we want to make sure as many people as possible get to vote. At the same time, we know what's happening. Well, I think we all know, or some people have an idea, that throughout the country, that there's been a lot of voter suppression. Now, I must say, don't be confused. Voter suppression is just not a Republican thing. It's a Democrat and Republican thing. As James Ntume, the artist, said, Democrat, Republican, two wings on the same bird. One will punch you in your face. I don't remember the exact quote. And the other one acts on a sneak tip. But we have in terms of Black people, we have an opportunity whenever they're in an equal situation, then we have an opportunity to come and show our power, but we have to show our power in an educated way. We just don't give up our votes. We make people do something for it. And that's not something we have done in quite a few decades. So yeah, in answer to your question, the potential for this to happen on a broader scale is off the chart. And it depends on, and it's not about waiting to the election. And what happens that everybody gets all excited for the presidential election, but what's the name of this program? All politics is local, right? So part of politics is understanding how this
plays out on the local level. That's right.
Right. But it's not real different. It's about not only knowing that you have the right to vote, but to show up to vote, right? But you got to be an educated voter. And that goes back to civics, but I got to come back. Generally, what happened in the South, and there's a book by this professor by the name of Vanessa Saddle Walker, I encourage everybody to get. It's called The Lost Education of Horace Tate, Uncovering the Hidden Heroes Who Fought for Justice in the School System. One of the things they talk about in this, aside from the fact that in his house, he had information that he had stored and that they had a network of Black teachers throughout the South nobody knew about, from Mississippi to Georgia to Alabama to Florida. The other thing more important regarding civics is that these Black teachers in the segregated South, when Black folks couldn't even be second-class citizens, they taught them civics. And if you really look at it in terms of who was the foundation for the civil rights movement, it wasn't Martin Luther King, who was told by the elders what he was going to do, or Rosa Parks, or any of the personalities you know. It were the 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds in those schools in the segregated South who may have been their families may have been sharecroppers, but because they were younger, they were able to stay in school all year. But the older students had to leave. These students who were 6, 7, 8 years old used to dress up in their Sunday go-to-meeting clothes, prepared to die. Now, tell me what 6, 7, 8-year-old who understands death. They understood death. They were willing to die, and they dressed up so you can put them in the casket when they died. They were already dressed to be put in the casket for the dignity of their parents and their grandparents, right? So those same people, when we talk about civics, particularly in the North, and I grew up, my last year of high school was during the end of the Great Migration. I lived with people who were still migrating from the South. I grew up in Scudder Homes housing projects. Most of the people who lived in that project had migrated from the South, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida. They were coming up straight from. And those people who were coming up through the Great Migration, who were those former children, who were 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds, who understood how to make elected officials accountable. That's how you got the first Black this and first Black that. And sadly, we still doing the first Black in 2023, right? But these are the people who made it possible for Ken Gibson, Sharp James. Those are the people that's not individual, but those are people around the country made it possible for Detroit, Coleman, and Los Angeles, right? But then what happened, they take civics out of the schools. They do it purposely in the urban areas because they don't want you to know how to make government accountable. Now, the problem we have right now, we have people in I call it the managerial, professional, and political gatekeeping class. And they're more effective than COINTELPRO because what they do is confuse the masses. And they come out, when we talk about elections, right? Everybody comes out the time trying to get the masses or get the people of the masses that they want to vote a certain way. But folks don't really want them to be educated. They just want to tell them, come and vote for me, but I'm not going to educate you about how you're supposed to make me accountable. And since the schools are not doing it, and remember, the churches are where you learn civics. You learn civics in the Baptist church, right? But what happened in the churches, right? And Christine Whitman is a good example that Christine Whitman actually, her claim to fame in the Bush administration was the fact that she figured out how to neutralize Black preachers. Used to have souls to the polls on Sunday, right? And so the reason why they brought her in administration is because she was able to figure out how to get some individuals who were leading religious organizations to front for real estate industry. So they would be compromised, right? And so, everybody does everything to keep the masses. You keep them confused. You don't teach them civics. You don't want to teach them civics. It's no way you want them to understand what their power is collectively and individually. So what's happening going back to
and I think you said that not teaching civics was on purpose.
And they started taking it out. Now let me just go back. New Jersey in 1947, and interesting. When Governor Christie pissed off everybody, the lawyers anyway, because he had decided he was not going to go along with the process or the practice that had happened with Democrats and Republicans on both sides regarding judges. And he decided that he was going to get rid of this particular judge whose name I can't remember. And there was this big thing down at the law center. All these attorneys came because how could he do this? The Democrats, Republican, they've always maintained this practice of letting people stay till they were 70 before they retired. Even if they were from another party, that had been the practice. So there was this person who was a specialist on New Jersey's Constitution. Normally, I would have raised my hand, but for some reason I didn't. I talked to this specialist on New Jersey's Constitution afterwards, and I said, everything you said about New Jersey's Constitution, which is comparable to the United States Constitution, is a really good Constitution that was done in 1947. But in 1947, civics was, hey, Larry, civics was required. You could not graduate from high school unless you took civics before 1947. So the Constitution we have is based on the fact that everybody was able to take civics, so they understood what the process was and they understood their role. But when you take it out, you don't have that foundation anymore. You don't have the foundation. And so now, I know there are a couple of people I've heard who are doing like civics things that have been happening around the city in particular. But, I always look at what your motives are, and your motives determine, or for me, where you're getting your money from to do it has an impact. Well, at least I think about where you're getting your money. Why all of a sudden you're so interested in civics, particularly with regard to its population? I'm just suspect because the money always tells you what, people's agenda is.
So with Governor Jackson, is it something we should be concerned about, or is it just...
Exactly, because it's a model for what can happen around the country. And so we should be focusing on that. So what do you do? So right now, that's what's going on. But what do we do from the rest of the country? What do Black folks do? What's our responsibility in the we? My position is that, and I see like,
how do we express solidarity to prevent it?
It's very difficult at a time post affirmative action when people's have a me mentality versus a we mentality. That's very difficult. But if you go back, and Larry talks about this in terms of the Montgomery bus boycott, right? We have to decide. We spend 95 cents on the dollar with everybody else but us. We spend 5 cents on the average in our own community. The only thing that these individuals understand is your money. And if I'm going to tell you, whether it's the police officers, any of these people who cause us challenges, if I'm them, I'm going to look and say, why should I respect them? Why should I respond in any way when I know? Because remember, the role of police is to protect the wealthy from making sure that, we don't act out and threaten them, basically. So, and you got to go back real quick. The police officers started out as the militia in the Second Amendment, whose job was to protect the white people from the indigenous people and to protect them from slave rebellions. They evolved into slave catchers that evolved to the police, and their job is to protect the wealthy and the property. That's their job. So the only reason why I'm going to respect you is if you stop giving me your money. That we have a model. The Montgomery bus boycott, it changed everything because they said, wait a minute, you can't disrespect me. and I'm gonna give you my money too. We're not getting it. But see, we got to decide, is money more important or material things more important than us? And until such time that we decide individually and in the collective, going back to solidarity is
what happened? You making a stink?
Yeah, some with the connection.
You want to answer?
Then to go out and come back in, right?
All right. Well, Larry, you want to say something?
Hold on a second, Don.
Chairman, I'm sorry.
Hold on a second, Don.
I'm just walking in, so I don't know what y'all are talking about, right?
She was talking about civics, civics.
She was talking about Jackson, Mississippi. Jackson, Mississippi is important to us on an organized level right now, because we are looking at doing an anniversary convention to mark the anniversary of the 1972 Garrett Convention, and the points of, and there are critical points of action that needs to come out of that in solidarity with Jackson and what it's facing in the effort to re-apartheid that town, right, from the water to its budget and a whole manner of how that's trying to go down. That's one of those points of challenge. The defense of the ballot is one of those challenges. So there's some serious points of action that we have to look at with that. And
but more importantly,
the co-convener of the convention is the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, Chokwe and Lumumba, right? Who was under siege as a consequence of this whatnot. So we want to lift him up and lift up the organizers that are raising hell on the ground. There are some national actions that are being planned in solidarity with Jackson. I want folks to pay attention to that. We need to get Rakaya back on, right? Rakaya Lumumba, his sister, one of his lead organizers. We need to get her on to really give us an in-depth analysis of what's actually happening in Jackson in order to do that, right? Now go ahead, Donnie. Bring in the demon.
Yeah, he's here.
Jackson is very serious. You know, we're in a state of there's so many terms to use, but you know, Jackson is probably an example of 21st century neo-apartheid. They're trying to set up a whole separate judicial system in Jackson that's going to be manned by judges appointed by the Republican racist legislature. And what they're trying to, the other thing they're trying to do is prevent Jackson from independently accessing the multi-million-dollar appropriation from the federal government for repair of its water system. I mean, I think I heard a figure. I could be wrong. Did I hear a figure of like 300 million, 400 million, something like that? Yeah, it's a huge amount of money because there was pressure on the Biden administration from all around the country to do something about Jackson, because we was appropriating all this money for Ukraine, and people were saying, well, damn, the people in Jackson don't have clean drinking water. So there was so much pressure put on that the Biden administration appropriated hundreds of millions of dollars. But instead of letting that money go straight, because at first the governor was going to refuse the money.
That's right. That's right.
But then it was such an outcry that the money had to come through. And now what they're doing is they're trying to seize control of the money so that the state government, the racist state government, will have control of the money rather than the people of Jackson.
Direct.
And see, we should look at Jackson as, you know, the kind of boat that we're all in. I remember reading back in the 1970s when I was still a student at Princeton University, and I was reading Bob Kervin's doctoral dissertation, which is a book now called Inside Newark. Everybody who wants to know about Newark should read that book. It is like one of the deepest analysis you'll get of the political economy of Newark. But what he was talking about, it was a kind of post-Black Power analysis. Remember, in the mid 60s, when Johnson first put forward the war on poverty, there were anti-poverty agencies established in these cities and Black communities around the country. In fact, in Newark, it still exists. It's the United Community Corporation.
Right.
And United Community Corporation had area boards. And believe it or not, the area boards were kind of a power base for Black people who aspired to office. Sharp James was on the area board, Dennis Westbrook. This is before they became councilmen. And at that time, in the early stages of the war on poverty, the funds would come directly to the cities and directly to the poverty agencies. But what happened? The white establishment put up such an outcry about these millions of dollars going straight to these cities and straight to these area boards. They developed the concept of what? The block grant. So the block grant went to what? The block grant went to the state government and the county governments. Because why? The state government was still under white control, still is under white control, and the county governments were under white control. And that's how they moved, they move. It's like every time, we win in the game, they move the goalposts.
That's right.
We play by the rules.
That's right.
We start winning, and as soon as they start winning, they start changing the rules, and they start moving the goalposts. And this is what happened in Jackson. Jackson was a radical, or is a radical model of Black power for the rest of the nation. But once Brother Chokwe Lumumba came to power, and then he died abruptly, unexpectedly. Then his son came to power. So now they are moving to contain Jackson so that other Black controlled municipalities in Mississippi don't get any ideas and don't aspire to be like Jackson. And this is a direct attack, and we have to look at this just like we look at South Africa. Well, people say, well, Jackson is way down there. Well, if we could be concerned about South Africa on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, we should be concerned about Jackson right here in the United States. And they're treating, this is where the colonial model comes in. They're treating Jackson like a colony.
That's right.
Like, and in the early 70s, this idea was put forward about internal colonialism, because in a classic colonial model, you have the mother country, the metropole, like England, France, and then you have established colonies, in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. But we in the United States, but they have set up a kind of internal colonialism, and now we could say, in many instances, internal neo-colonialism, because it's not like it's not like apartheid, like Newark was in 1960. Now most of these Black cities have Black mayors, and so they're moving to make sure they cannot do independent things. Look at the Police Review Board. Ras Baraka comes to power, establishes a police review board, and what happens? That's right. And what happens? Boom. State Supreme Court says you can't do that. You can have a police review board, but you can only get your power for subpoena power from the state government. And what has the state government done in 4 years? They have refused to give Newark and anybody else any subpoena power.
Larry, can I jump in?
Jump on.
Thank you very much. Okay, so basically, when you were talking about South Africa, actually, it's like a model of Haiti. You know, Haiti is a model for
Right.
don't you ever try to get out from underneath us again.
That's
going
a
to
very
be a problem
deliberate
for you.
model also.
Right.
Haiti is
That's
still
the model.
paying
We're
the
going to
price
punish you.
for
We're going to
daring
punish
to be
you for
independent,
eternity.
daring to overthrow slavery, and to be
But
independent.
three people
Still,
talking. What did you say? What did you say, Craig?
so Haiti is still paying the price.
Right. Now,
For
let me
daring to
just,
overthrow the slave
Right.
trade and daring to be independent as a black state.
let
Still
me
paying
just
the
say,
price.
just to comment what Larry said, one of the things we have to understand, they're always 50 years ahead of us. In the
Yeah.
1970s, 71, 72, I forgot which is which, there was a paper, the Powell Memorandum, which was written on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, which basically kind of laid out a lot of things that we see right now. What we see there is really, sometimes they have to tweak stuff a little bit, but these papers are written. The other one was Crisis in Democracy. It wasn't about a crisis in democracy. It's like, how dare you think, people, how dare you think that you're entitled to a constitution or a democracy? And it was a response to the women's movement, the Black Power movement, the Young Lords, the Weathermen, you name it. It was a response. These papers were written 50 years ago. So the one thing that I have to give them, I'm not saying they should get anything good, but one thing about the structure, the power structure, is that they plan ahead. They're lockstep. That's the difference between them and the other side. They'll be lockstep for the people on the ground all the way to the heads of the corporations. They're in lockstep. And they're 50 years ahead of us. We have to think tactically, strategically. We did do that. And I was saying that before we got off. You think about the Montgomery bus boycott and all these other things that have happened up into affirmative action. We were thinking, without all this education, we were thinking strategically, tactically. We were doing that. And then something happened. And now we have situations that we got to run around in a ad hoc kind of situation, figure out how we're going to stop what's going on, because it's coming our way. As Larry pointed out, it's already happening in different ways. But that one is just real obvious. You can't act like it's not happening. It's real obvious. The thing Larry's talking about, civilian review boards and things, that's not as obvious, but this one is. This is. And, my position is that we have to.
Dangerous step backwards.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Zaid?
A dangerous step backwards.
Yeah, and we're not ready.
And our solidarity matters.
Right. And that's our choices. Your choices, either we're going to act in lockstep somewhere, and it's difficult when everybody has different fingerprints. We're all different people. We just share a color, and a condition in terms of where we fit in the society. That's what we share. And unfortunately, no matter, the fact that some of us think we're individuals, that's fine, but that's not going to help the situation, because as an individual, you can't do anything. I mean, there's some things you can do, but for all intent and purpose, we're much more effective when we think long-term, strategically, and tactically, and we're not doing it anymore. Everybody's so busy in their little fiefdoms that we're not paying attention, and we're drowning. Larry? I can't believe us both at the same time.
I put myself on mute so you wouldn't hear my affirmations of what you were saying. Because you know how we do in church, right?
I know.
Yeah.
I can't believe
I didn't want to interrupt. But it's true. We're in a vice-like situation, but it's not hopeless. I mean, this is Black History Month. If there's anything that Black history teaches us, is that it's not hopeless. And I think Linda, Sister Carter, hit it on the head. Our salvation is in our collective endeavor.
Yeah,
As Frederick Douglass says, we all rise together, or we all fall together. And to the degree that we have either embraced or distanced ourselves from that principle, commensurately shows how much progress we make or how far backward we go. And but the situation in Jackson is very, very grievous, very serious. But you know what Jackson does? It unfolds, it makes clearer to the rest of us what this situation is and the limitations of Black power. See, there's a theoretical discussion to be held here beyond, the particular issues of the day. And I believe this is what since Amiri Baraka is prescient right now because they're trying to remove his works from all kind, not just the AP curriculum, but all kind of Black studies courses. This is what he was trying to say. One of the things that he was trying to say toward the end of his life. I can remember as early as probably as early as 1972, Amiri Baraka, then Imamu Baraka, using the phrase Black faces in high places.
That's right.
And talking about the kind of neo-colonial situation we see ourselves in. You know what neo-colonialism is? Colonialism is when you have direct administration by the colonial power. And like when I was in Bermuda, they took me to the royal governor's mansion. That's the agent of the English government in Bermuda. And in the old days, the royal governor was the governor. There was no elected government, But what happened in independence? Black people, say for instance in Ghana, they got a parliament, they got a flag, they got a president, but the economy, the economic basis of Ghanaian society remained in the hands of the white imperialists, fundamentally. And this situation persists today. And in a similar fashion, we see ourselves, in this internal colonial situation. How far can we go? Because cities don't have the resources to really remedy the problems that face Black people. The cities, if you took away state aid and federal aid, the cities could not run. They could not pay the police. They could not pay the fire department. They could not pay the sanitation workers. And if you can't pay them three, oh boy, you in the world of trouble, So we find ourselves coming to that point now. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't elect Black people. Of course, we should still elect Black people. It goes without saying. But I think we're now tempering our perspective in terms of understanding the limitations of municipal government. This is why Dr. King is at the end of his life was putting on his fire on the federal government. I just saw a speech, a clip the other night, on Instagram or one of these social media sites. Dr. King said, we need a program with billions of dollars, to correct the problems of unemployment and poverty. And he was absolutely right. In fact, as early as the book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, Dr. King was saying that the war on poverty, that the money being spent for the war on poverty at that time when he was still alive, he said was a pittance. He said it was a drop in the bucket on what it would take to eliminate poverty in this country.
Larry, I would just want to add one thing. When you talked about the poverty programs, I think people should know that Johnson at the time, while he was so-called funding the poverty programs, actually allocated a sizable portion of money to police around the country too, simultaneously.
Absolutely.
The other thing is that, let's go back to the 5 police officers in Memphis to think about when we think about Black politicians or brown politicians. We now have, to some degree, in addition to what you were saying, we have a political, managerial, and professional class that sometimes confuses the masses and keeps them from knowing. And sometimes that group can be more effective than COINTELPRO in terms of keeping us in positions where we don't react to situations like we should. be acting, especially in situations like Jackson. We have people that just because they're Black and share color and maybe oppression doesn't necessarily mean they have the interests of the masses. Sometimes the selfishness gets in the way too.
Right on the both of y'all. You're both on point. I want to bring Sister Yvonne Garrett Patterson into the conversation because she's because
A little bit louder, Nahem.
right. I want to bring her into the conversation, and as I do that, I want to bring two things together. I want to bring together how we're winding up Black History Month with a powerful march tomorrow in defense of Black history, and how we segue into Women's History Month with the lifting up of women who've been critical in holding up our struggle for quite a long time. So, Ademo, I want you to sum up what's going to happen tomorrow, why that's important, and then we're going to move to Yvonne and let her tell about what's going to happen next week.
Well, as everyone knows, there's been a frontal attack on Black history and Black studies in the last, actually last 2 years. And this has been under the guise of CRT. You know, they couldn't find an enemy, so they had to make up an enemy. You know, so they couldn't use communism anymore since the Soviet Union dissolved. You know, the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. It's just Russia, you know, and the Russian Federation. So they had to find a new boogeyman, and the new boogeyman was critical race theory. And you know,
what's the name's language? Woke ideology.
Right. So these people, DeSantis in Florida,
DeSantis.
Yeah, he put forward a woke law, which was passed by the state legislature, that criminalizes teachers who dare use books that have been banned. Like they banning books already. You know, like that's the first thing Hitler did when he came to power in Germany, when he became chancellor. Nazi party went into schools, gathered up books and started burning, you know, and fired teachers that wouldn't toe the Nazi line. And you got Youngkin. They revised the curriculum in the elementary curriculum in Virginia and took out Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was too much for him, you know. But you got to see that this was a backlash. Remember what happened just a few years ago? That sister Bree, what was her name? Bree Ross. She climbed the flagpole, took down the Confederate flag. I was in Florida when this happened. I was in Jacksonville.
She was in South Carolina.
When I saw that on the news, tears came out my eyes. This sister went up the flagpole and got the flag down. And that put Haley, who's going to run for president next year, put her in a peculiar position. She had been playing footsie with these Confederates all her time. Now she had to come right. And now she had to come out and be against the Confederate flag. And then what happened? Cities started removing these Confederate monuments. And all these Confederate monuments were put up, not after the Civil War, were put up at the turn of the century to reestablish the Old South. You know, it's the redemption story, you know, to make the South the good guys and the North the bad guys, you know. And so they had to look around and find a tool to use to attack Black history. So we're having this march tomorrow, Saturday, February 25th. We're going to meet at the Lincoln statue at 11 a.m. The Lincoln statue is in front of the old courthouse. It's number 12 Springfield Avenue. It's between Springfield and West Market Street. And we're going to march to show solidarity, not just with our brothers and sisters in Florida and in Virginia. Do you know that they have passed, they have passed 500 bills. They not passed, they have introduced 500 bills that would impact the teaching of Black history in states all across the country. And then here in New Jersey ain't no outlier. That New Jersey passed the Amistad law in 2003. We got 600 public school districts in New Jersey, maybe a dozen of them have actually done something with Amistad. So we want people to come out and join us tomorrow for the march.
So Linda, Yvonne,
And
come
did
on
you
in.
say where you're meeting at?
Yes, the Lincoln Monument at 11 a.m. So Yvonne, I want to apologize to you. I originally was supposed to have you on a little earlier, but I'm glad you're there. I'm glad you know what you're doing next week too. So tell us with the few minutes that we have left, what is happening at the library that the Patterson Foundation is co-hosting next week to lift up important voices of the women in our community. You're muted, Yvonne.
There you go.
There you go.
It was more important for me to listen than talk, and what was shared tonight was very important.
It's noted. Yes, it
was.
was.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Professor Carter, I salute you. I salute you. Sister Donna, I salute you as our sisters. And thank you, brothers, for your leadership. Thank you for being pillars in our community and holding us up. We love you, and we're just so grateful for your faithfulness and your leadership and your care and your love for us. We felt it was important, myself and several other sisters and organizations felt it was important that we needed to organize to take advantage of the platform of the National History Month for Women and to do something locally to focus on the value of women in our local community, the region of Newark and beyond. We have some incredible women who are on the front lines addressing some extraordinary issues, advancing, stabilizing, and supporting. And so we want to honor the women who are in their different spheres of service, to recognize how important they are, certainly to themselves, to their family, and to community. So we decided to organize what is called the Greater Newark Women's Assembly. It'll take place March the 4th and March the 5th. March the 4th will be at the main library of Newark, downtown, 5 Washington Street. It'll be a full day of activity starting at 9 in the morning. We'll have presenters and different topics that will be shared to help the women in navigating their waters, to empower them, to encourage them to keep going and to continue to fulfill their destiny and purpose. And so our hope and goal is to give tools and encouragement and support for the women of Newark, those who are on the front lines in service and those who are emerging or need direction and help and guidance. And so Sister Donna and Professor Carter, we pray that you will consider coming and being a part of that discussion. We will have discussions and engaging the women on different topics. And then at 12 noon, we will have an honors luncheon in the library. And we'd love for you to come and be a part of that as well. On Sunday, we have a worship service at the Centerplex Theater because faith is important. I mean, Newark has been known historically with thousands of the city of churches. And so we know that faith is important to the welfare and the stability of our community. And we want to focus on faith and speak declarations to accomplish goals and initiatives. One of the things I do want to say that it's important that we tap into the value and the power of vision. And we need leaders that have vision so that we can advance, because, there's scripture for those who are biblically based. We perish without a vision. And so we need vision, and we need to cultivate the vision that's within the community. And the women of our city have great vision and insight, but they need to be empowered to fulfill those visions, the ingenuity, the innovation, so that we can support the collective economics that we need to invest in. We have a lot of women who have now established new businesses. We need to support those businesses. We need to know that those businesses exist, like Sister Malaika Muhammad on Clinton Avenue. She's been there for 12 years, and still a lot of people don't know that she exists. We have to shop at home and invest back into community. So we're believing that the Greater Newark Women's Assembly is going to be an opportunity for us to have dialogue and conversation, get to know each other better, and invest in each other so that we can cultivate the innovation and the ingenuity that lies within our ranks. I'd like to close with this. The seal of the city of Newark has 2 women on it. And I believe it's prophetic. Whoever designed the seal of the city of Newark knew something about women's capacity. And we need to refocus on that symbol, because with the majority of the population being women, we have women single head of households. We need to protect the women of our community and give them every opportunity to fulfill their destiny and purpose. So the seal of the city of Newark has 2 women, and it takes unity to do this. We cannot do it alone. We have to work together. Professor Carter, I want to get your phone number and call you, because we certainly want to see you engaged and sharing your wisdom, knowledge, and insight to the younger women that we believe will be at the assembly as well, to pass the legacy and the knowledge so that they can continue to grow. So the women on the seal of Newark have very specific symbols. There's a symbol of the scales of justice. There's a sword across one of the sisters' laps, because we know we have to fight the good fight of faith. There's a horn of plenty that speaks to our prosperity. And there's also liberty. And in the middle of those 2 women is a brother with his fist held high, because without you, we can do nothing. We need the brotherhood, there's no question. But our sisters have very specific assignments, very specific roles to support the welfare, the health, and the vitality of our families, ourselves, and our beloved community. And so we need to celebrate that. We need to honor it. We need to recognize it and continue to cultivate our God-given talent, gifts, and abilities to fulfill our destiny and purpose. But we have to come together to do it. So we look forward to the Greater Newark women community to come out for this gathering. I also want to give acknowledgement to Reverend Rountree and Monica MacGyver for organizing a kickoff women's event on March the 3rd. They met February 3rd, and they'll meet again March the 3rd. So it'll be a full weekend of women celebrating. The March 3rd event will take place at the Priory. And I want to also acknowledge Linda Juma Baraka, which I think she's an extraordinary figure that can bring so much to the women of the city of Newark, as well as our global impact, because I believe that Linda has the ability to emphasize the global impact that Newark has and our connection to the global community. So the women in our community are strategically placed now. There's emerging leadership, of course, as we see with Monica MacGyver and with Reverend Rountree and Linda Baraka working together. So they'll host the women's event on March the 3rd, Friday night, starting at 6 at the Priory. Then we go to the library on Saturday, full day of honoring women, bringing information, and then Sunday worship service. So that's our kickoff for Women's History Month. We're excited about it. We have every reason to be, because the women are just exquisite and they have so much to offer and offer so much to community. And so we need the support, and thank you for allowing us to have this time, Brother Saeed, to share our celebration notice.
Well, let's talk a little more. We got a couple minutes left.
Okay.
Right? Let's tell us some of the groups that make up this incredible, and I just love the name of this women's assembly. I love that. That is so powerful, right? And then tell us also some of the women who are going to be honored.
Wow. Well, we have a long list. You know, I mean, we've got unsung heroes that need to be recognized for.
Start with your partners that are sponsoring. Start there.
So we have the Caring Network Volunteer Services. We have another women in ministry leadership, the Ray of Hope. We have Jenny Holt, who beats the streets. Jenny Holt established a church up in the Clinton Hill community, and it about 10, 15 years ago when it was the darkest in the community. And she got out in the street and she began to pray and seek the community for support. And it's a different place now. It's not the same. And so we have women of that caliber who are committed to the welfare of our community, that are available in community and are making a difference. You've got Dr. Brenda Bird, Helping Hands Network. Sister Bird is just totally committed to the welfare, making sure that women, are taken care of, families are taken care of. You've got women like Brenda Scott, who is at the North Reformed Church down on Washington Street. Brenda Scott everybody needs to go and sit at Brenda Scott's feet, because the wisdom that she gives, the passion, the love, the care. She's an elder sister, and she's heading up the pantry in that facility. And the sister that founded that facility decided she was going to sell her fur coat to establish a feeding ministry for the city of Newark. And now there's several of those facilities available just because she sacrificed her own personal interest for the sake of others. So just the little things that we can do will make a difference. I've been trying to connect with our dear Mary James. I think she's one of the unsung heroes of our community. I mean, she weathered and stood and is still standing by her husband today, and has provided stability. She's one of the most influential women in the city of Newark. But how many people have really taken the time to recognize how much she has sacrificed and contributed for the stabilization of Newark, and demonstrating what women can do when they support their husbands and their families. So we have women such as that. We've got Mamie Bridgeforth, who is a keeper of the light, for the city of Newark. And one of her primary areas of exhortation to us is we have to stabilize family. That's the saving grace of our community. What does it take for us to understand rules of engagement so that we can be stable people and build stable relationships? And we get this from mothers. I mean, that's where we get it. And so we have to promote motherhood. We have to promote legacy and leadership. And this is why, Professor Carter, you are essential to the welfare of the city of Newark. The wisdom and the knowledge, the insight, the experience, the training is, it's not just for yourself. It's for the sake and the benefit of community. And so we're drawing on those giftings, those talents, and that ability so that we can be the stronger, better people. But we cannot get it alone.
As we stated earlier, our stories are so big, so vast, so you will definitely be invited back. But we have a question. Is that easy? The question.
Oh, you want me to ask it? Okay. Yvonne, I didn't get a chance to tell you that for all of this show's advanced content, this is a hip hop talk show.
Okay.
All of our guests. This is the ritual question. We ask all of our guests this particular question, particularly if it's their first time on the show, and we will certainly have you back. We didn't even give you a chance to talk about the Patterson Foundation, so we'll definitely have you back, right? Okay. Who is your favorite hip hop artist or group, or is there a particular hip hop song or group that you're listening to now to get you to help you in your getting yourself going? Now, I know you stone church. That's why we understand that, and you can live out the church too if that's what you got. It's all.
My sound is Lauryn Hill. I have to go back to Sister Hill. She laid it down, and we still rocking and
Jersey girl,
right? So, yeah, she's it for me. I'm telling you, I'm so very thankful. Even though I have a jazz background and love all of the women jazz artists, but for a more contemporary style, I don't think anybody can compare to Lauryn Hill. I think she's phenomenal. And so I know it could probably be more contemporary, more current.
That's all good. That's all good. Lauren is a hip hop original, Jersey girl too.
Yes,
right? It's a wonderful way to wind up the show. Donna, you want to sum up the show and the wind up?
Or can I say something? You don't have time.
Go ahead, Professor Carter.
Okay, just really quickly on the 29th, just want everybody to know that at the Newark Public Library, we will have a program, What Happened to the Soul, The
29th
weaponization.
of March?
March 29th from 6 to 8. What happened to the soul? The weaponization of hip hop. I think, you know, everybody should try to come out because it has such influence over how young people 50 and younger think. And the last thing, going back to Women's History Month, just to let people know that Black women were able to vote way before Black men in the state of New Jersey. And it was only until later on that, you know, became a problem. But early, we were able to vote in the 1700s, at the beginning of this country, in the beginning of voting in the state of New Jersey, Black women were able to vote. So, you know, that's Yvonne, if you contact me, I'll give you my, I did the work.
In itself. I'll end with this because I want everybody to hold at the library, March 25th, 1 o'clock.
29th.
No, I'm laying out something different.
For you. Okay.
March 25th, an afternoon that we're going to dedicate to the great Sister Zul Latifah Zahira too.
Yeah.
That's what I want folks to look forward to, that I'll be doing with the National Black Panther political alumni and African Echoes. Look forward to that.
Okay.
That'll take us home.
Were you finished, Professor Carter?
Yes. Thank you for letting me say
that. Chairman? No.
Hope everybody comes out. Hope everybody comes out tomorrow for the protest against the ban on Black studies. And again, that'll be tomorrow, Saturday, February 25th, 11 a.m. at the Lincoln Statue, 12 Springfield Avenue at the intersection of Springfield and West Market. And let's come out and raise our voices, exercise our right to protest while we still have it. And I don't say that jokingly. They have introduced laws to circumscribe our ability to protest. So we gotta fight back, y'all.
Yes, sir. Well, with that being said,
all of our guests, we had the disciples who lit it up the way they always do, and we want to shout that he couldn't be today. I want to acknowledge Abdul Haqq Muhammad and his presence representing the Nation of Islam. 26th is Savior's Day, which is the big day in the nation's history, right? And he's probably on his way to Chicago. That's probably why he's not here. I didn't get a chance to talk to him directly, but I know that's a big weekend for those who are in the Nation of Islam. I want to acknowledge him. I want to acknowledge our guests from Rutgers as they get ready to turn up the volume and hoping that they don't have to go on strike to address their labor situation at Rutgers. Ihsan and Whitney. I wanted to acknowledge them, and I want to acknowledge Ike Nahem from the US-Cuba Normalization Committee as we get ready for that powerful conference that's going to happen in March also. Great show, great time. We will see y'all next week, same black time, and as we stay in the culture, you don't stop.
But as before we leave, I just want to give a shout out to the Manasseh family from Mount Olive and Orange. The patriarch is going on to glory. We will celebrating his life tomorrow, and we'll be lifting him up. And take us out. Take us out.
That's right. So, all right. We'll see y'all next week. Same time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Right?
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Good night, Mr. Ham.
Good night.
God bless you.
God bless you.
Come on.
We're technically still on the air, so I'm gonna keep talking.
Yeah.
Y'all come out tomorrow, bundle up. We gotta end the show, Donna.